As a kid, he devoured story after story of fearless adventurers, and every book he finished lit a new spark, until he couldn't stop dreaming of becoming one himself. City of Magic, the lecturers of the Institute of Magic, and she won't let it go. She presses him again, asking about the adventurer. She quizzed him about what he'd just gotten into, then quickly reassured him. Don't stress, based on those grades, he's definitely not getting expelled. Years later, someone yells at the protagonist, demanding news about the adventurer, and snaps that this is no time for jokes. The same woman tells him he can be anything, either a court magician or a professor, and he has to choose before graduation. The boy declares, I'm going to become an adventurer, while the woman snaps back, that's impossible. He fires back, saying he gets to choose his own fate. Then the woman calls him William and straight up asks if he realizes what's happening to him right now. Because he's got perfect grades, he's the Institute's brightest hope, and she wants to know if he even understands he's the best student among all his graduating class. She can't believe it. How does someone this brilliant end up playing adventurer? That's going to wreck the Institute's name, and she'll get hit with punishment later. The guy just watches, silent as stone, and in his head, he's already nodding along. He learned a ton at the Institute, and for once they treated him right, so he promised he'd never trash their name, saying he finally understood, and that if he kept that word, he wouldn't turn into anything bad. He tells her William Glenford just graduated and still has no clue what comes next, but she's completely lost. So he leans in and says, from now on, you've got to act like it's already real, because if you pretend hard enough, it'll turn into the truth. What? The woman lunges to stop William, but he slips away and tells her the Institute's reputation will stay spotless this way. Then she yells his name, first and last, and boom, that's how he earned his graduation from the Institute. At the Lady of City, inside the Adventurers Guild, a cute girl beams as she thanks him for registering. Then he grins back and clutches his badge like it's a promise. She tells him he'll begin as an F-rank adventurer, pushes him to grind and climb higher, and he nods along, agrees, and thanks her for the motivation. He'd always been hungry for adventure, no matter what. He grips the badge in his hand and lets out a guilty little thrill, because he's finally an adventurer at last, but this is just step one. If he wants to call himself a true professional, he'll have to rack up achievements and climb his rank fast. He's on the hunt for a stand that comes packed with tasks. He stares at it and spots the mission to wipe out goblins, and he mutters that this is the kind of starter quest newbies always get, at least that's what he's heard. And yeah, his quest rank is E, so he knows a lone E-ranker can't take that job. Guild rules demand a party of at least 4. Right then, a stranger steps up and asks, you looking for a team? He whips around and the place is empty. Then a voice roars from below, he's here. He glances down and blurts out, confused, wait. Turns out it's a cute cat girl. She perks up, waves, and says her name is Me, then tells him that if she's not wrong, he's an F-rank adventurer, and she lanes in like, am I right? What? She looks tiny to him for a second, but then he snaps his own assumption, realizing she's a beastman, looks younger than her years, yet somehow even smaller than that. He can't stop thinking about what Zelenia is really up to, and now he's ready to make a move. William reaches for her head, and she's totally confused about what he's about to do. He strokes her head, tells her this isn't a place for little girls to play, insists she's wrong, then shuts him down. She's already a fully formed woman. He snaps into a serious tone and tells her to calm down. It was just a joke. Then he leans in and says a real adventurer has to know how to land a good laugh, even if he's still got a long way to go, because experience is what truly matters. The girl snaps that he's a total idiot, and the guy fires back, asking if she mentioned a team. Me confirms it. Yeah, we've got a 3-person team, all F-ranked. He nods like he finally gets it, then realizes they're short one player. The girl turns the question on him. So are you joining? He says yes and demands me introduce him to the other 2. Me agrees. He swears if he's not mistaken, she's a thief, and the girl just nods, smiling like he's totally a magician. The boy nods and says she's right, and the girl fires back that the other 2 are a warrior and a priest. Then the protagonist lanes in, says he gets it, and praises it as a perfectly competent team setup. In his head, he pictures an old tenant and a hard-hitting warrior, and since most adventurers he's heard of are men, he assumes he's just a walking mascot for the team. He even fantasizes about a brutal showdown over a woman and shrugs like it's normal. Then the girl steps forward, and he follows right after her. The pretty girl praises Mia's work, then lines in and asks, so, is this our candidate? The protagonist spots 2 gorgeous girls right in front of him, and his jaw drops in shock. Then Mi steps up and tells him, it's me, calling her Saki, and the other girl leans in to ask if he likes the look of his face. She nods along, tells him he looks awesome, then slides right into asking about his hobbies, only for her to snap to a stop and blurt, this isn't some kind of marriage interview. She blurts, why do you bring a guy that handsome? And when I don't worry, she just smirks, he's a magician, and Saki goes, that's awesome. The second girl blurts out, "I'm sorry," saying they're clueless about manners, then asks, "So what's wrong?" The main character freezes, stunned out of nowhere, and wonders if the info about most male adventurers was a total lie. He shoots it down, admits he was just shocked, and tells them to drop it, then says someone told him the team has a priest and a fighter. He assumes it can't be fully true because her class is literally called Samurai, and then she blooms right before his eyes. She blurts out, thrilled, that she's just happy he finally heard about her. The second girl blurts out that yeah, now that she thinks about it, it's true. Then the first girl introduces herself as Saki, and he answers with William. The second girl follows up with, "I'm Cyrilla," and the protagonist grins, saying, "Nice to meet you." What? So the four of them teamed up and charged out to finish the mission with the goblins by their side. Saki spots two guards lurking nearby. She whips around to Mia and asks if she can take them down quietly. Mia hesitates, thinks she can't pull off both, and then turns to William for the answer. He shoots himself a thought, silence is the move, and decides, yeah, that'll work. Then he smirks and says he'll knock them out first, and after that, it's on them. Saki's thrown for a loop. Wait, what are you even saying? Cyrilla's just as stunned. The protagonist starts to cast a spell to knock them out cold, but Cyrilla suddenly snatches his staff and demands to know what he's doing. She can't even wrap her head around what she just did when the staff erupts in glowing light, and before she can get a single word out, the spell surges and spreads. A horse-drawn carriage rumbles nearby, and someone tells the owner, "That thing is insanely comfortable." The man breaks into laughter and goes, "Of course it is, because I had it specially made for me, and I paid 1,000 gold coins for it." What? The boy blurts out that he's over the moon to be driving such a fancy carriage, and the man laughs, saying, "If you want, I'll push it even faster." The boy tells him, "I get it," and just like that the man in the carriage starts to slump, swearing at Leisha is right there, while the young guy yawns and even the horse begins to doze off. Suddenly the carriage jolts off the road and smashes into the earth. 3 passengers are out cold mid-sleep. The entire city dropped into silence, like every soul just fell asleep at once. What she realized sealed it. Norvin was doomed, and a massive disaster was marching straight for the city. The young man blurts that he's lost control, and his 3 partners are still out cold. Sure, he's let his guard slip, but losing control is the one move you never, ever make. He's lucky it was only a dream, because as an adventurer he's got a lot more to learn, and right now he's starting to wake up Saki. William urges her to wake up, and slowly she snaps back to her senses. She jolts up out of nowhere and blurts, "Wait, what happened?" He tells her straight that his sleep spell did it, then asks if she can wipe out the monsters. Saki hits him with a blunt warning. If you strike down your opponent when they're defenseless, you don't deserve the title of samurai, and it completely blinds the protagonist. He figures this is her warrior pride, tells her he gets it, and begs to wake Cyrilla. Then he gets his wish as Mia jumps in, and the girl agrees that William himself is trying to wake her. After a little while, Mia and Cyrilla finally come back. Cyrilla claims she dealt with those 2 monsters herself, and blood drips off her staff as proof. He whips around to the priestess, desperate to ask what happened. Then the girl cuts in and blurts that she's got questions too. She snaps that he dives into things without warning a single soul, then glares and asks what would have happened if they'd messed up, because right now, she's accusing him of trying to put everyone in danger. He can't help thinking the goblin's sleep magic mistake is the real issue, but he catches himself, then admits she's right about at least one thing. Even the tiniest crack in luck can get you killed. He'd read that in the grim logs of past adventurers, so the moment the protagonist stumbled, she asked for forgiveness. Cyrilla de Yumina takes his apology and swallows her anger, telling him she understands it all perfectly. So yeah, if we're saying everything she said is true, then she's right. She admits that when everything ends like this, she feels stupid and ashamed, and the hero snaps back that even if the odds were terrible, he never should have been that arrogant. So the girl fires back that his useless apologies don't matter because he's still arrogant. Cyrilla lets out a heavy sigh and admits that when people don't see things the same way, it can get tough fast, while Saki squirms, a little embarrassed too. The protagonist clocks Mia's move and realizes she's tuning her ears to the sounds around her. Then William flicks out another magic eye. He shoves the spell into Mia, and at first that girl's ear twitches. Then she pushes herself up straight into the moment, and Mia flicks her head left, then right, scanning everything. She's stunned. This whole thing was supposed to be invisible, but her instincts are too sharp for that. Then he whips around to face her, and Cyrilla cuts in. She asks what she's hearing, and the girl snaps back. No footsteps at all, nothing nearby, and this cave feels like it could go deep. The tenant nods and says that's good, then tells me she'll be right at the front, while William, her, and Saki head out. She warns that the goblins could slip back in from the outside, so samurai better stand guard. The girl tells her, "I get it," and that hits the protagonist hard. This is what real knowledge and real skill look like. Sarilla's smarts and Mia's talent right there in front of him. He hasn't even seen Saki's abilities yet, but this team is anything but ordinary, and no matter what, one thought keeps clawing at his mind. He's wondering if this is a weird beastman thing, but Kuzia just can't figure out what that impulse even is. Meanwhile, I wag my tail like it's the most obvious answer. The boy's hands shook as he reached up for the girl's head, thinking he just wanted to pet her hair. Then she spun around and snapped that there were 5 goblins up ahead. The protagonist snaps his head away and tells them he'll use sleep. Then right before he casts the spells, he'll let the staff go. That release will be the signal. Before that, it was totally empty, no trace, no fight. The protagonist drops his staff and slings out a sleep spell again, and Saki rockets forward with her katana, but the goblins instantly crumble into deep sleep. She can't believe they've zonked out too, and Sarilla snaps back that she's right. Then they'll step in and take care of everyone. She tells herself it's just luck, sleep only spreads so far. Saki squirms with that weird, awkward feeling, and in the quiet gap between her and William, the silence stretches. She whips around and begs him to forgive her for what she put him through, then snaps back that calling him selfish for saying unfounded stuff like samurai can't do it. She knows it's wrong. The hero finally clicks this is what's been gnawing at her. The girl snaps that if she backs off now, she'll never swing that sword with pride again. William tells her to stop stressing, and if this is how it has to be, then they'll just have to learn to live with it. The girl's cheeks explode into a blush. He reckons anything could happen while he's stuck in this room. Then the girl yanks his hand and tells him, right to his face, that because he accepted it so fast and so easily, he's definitely a great guy. She asks, "Can I call you William?" And he nods yes. Then Sarilla cuts in, declaring they're done, and pushes the whole group to move on. The samurai flashes a grin and tells him to hang on for a moment, because the second he gets the chance, he's going to witness her at her absolute peak. He blurts that he's been waiting for this, then the girl turns, he demands to know why she's so captivating. She says she can't find the words to explain herself, but she's still completely baffled by what's happening right here. He says he'll use the same sleep spell like before, but when the girl asks what happens then, she collapses in despair and says, "At this rate, I'll never get my chance to shine," and the guy shoots back that it's the safer move. Sarilla snapped her head to the guy and demanded, "Was I wrong?" because she'd fully expected the spell wouldn't be this massive and world-shaking. The protagonist demands what she means, and me quickly says, "Let me explain. If the Dream Magnum's crowd attack can work on 1 or 2 targets, then he's already pulled off something huge." He says he finally gets it, and as far as he knows, once a magician swaps spells for adventuring, the law's institution usually cuts them loose, so their powers can be treated like the norm. The protagonist says when you're dealing with an experienced magician, spells like that showing real power is totally normal, and before it can sink in, Sarilla whips around to William and demands, "So who are you?" William answers, "I trained at the Institute of Witchcraft," but Sarilla smirks, saying she can tell anyway, because a self-taught nobody could never reach that level, then shuts it down hard, and I don't have it. She asks if he's a magician, and at first he just goes silent, then boom, the truth hits, and he finally says he gets exactly what she meant. Even if it's just a tiny bit of that, it's still wrong, because he can cast spells, and that means everyone earns the title of a mage. He finally admits he carries the title of sorcerer, and when Sarilla and I hear it, we're blown away. We grill him again like, "Wait, are you serious?" They press him like, why even be an adventurer, since, with a sorcerer's title, he can become anybody, and the protagonist can't stop replaying what that woman said, he can become anyone. Saki cuts in, slams the brakes on the conversation, and demands they wait, because she's lost and wants to know who these sorcerers even are. Sarilla smirks and explains that, yeah, it's like a tenant. If you're talking about a high tenant, then you're really looking at a top-ranking big shot, the kind who can even run the temple. The protagonist stays stone-cold silent as Saki leans in and dares him. If he can become anyone, then why not a king? Sarilla shoots it down, saying she doesn't see that happening, but a court magician. Yeah, that one could actually work. So if he can become anyone he wants, becoming an adventurer becomes effortless. Zarilla agrees, and now he's starting to change. The protagonist shouts for everyone to push forward, but Mia grabs William and begs him to wait, because the road has gotten so brutal she can't tell which way is safe. William apologizes on the spot, admitting he totally forgot to warn her. The left and right paths both slam into a dead end. Mick stares at him, shocked out of her mind. Then the maid shrugs and says he's still digging for a way forward, because there's just no other path at all, and the other girls snap into the same stunned silence. He crouches and starts sketching the cave map in the dirt, then points and says the cave looks just like this, before turning to everyone and demanding, "What happened?" Saki blurts, "How do you even know the way?" William leans in and tells them. When he stepped into the cave, he cast the magic ice spell, and boom, It conjured an invisible eye that shows you everything in its view, even though it glides forward at walking speed. The girls are still wide-eyed, but one of them is fuming because now she's got nothing to do. Then the boy shuts her down, saying he feels no trap at all and doesn't spot any reinforcements lurking outside. He insists this is a job only Mia can pull off, and Mia nods like she's got it. In her head, she's already mapping out traps and stacking reinforcements. Suddenly, the girl spots something. Saki then snaps that all these precautions were for nothing, and that sting of disappointment hits hard. Mia nods like she gets it, then snaps, "Don't you dare slack off." She wheels on Cirilla and fires a sharp question: did those goblins set traps? She says maybe they could pull off tiny traps and simple pits too, but honestly they're not that smart. Then I hand her a trap and tell her to look, because it's exactly like the one that this goblin made. This trap is built to snare prey, but it's anything but simple. She declares it's impossible, then freezes when she realizes someone this advanced is right here. Suddenly the hive clicks into place, claiming it all feels like a Cirilla thought, and points out that he's finally found the end of the cave. Then the protagonist nods, saying that waiting there are a goblin mage and a goblin lord. The priestess's eyes widen, two of them, and the girl shoots back, "How are we this unlucky?" Saki whirls toward them and demands who these Macan Lord even are. The goblin mage then proves it can sling spells that look just like human magic, and the goblin lord, oh wow, turns out to be way stronger and far smarter than any normal goblin. Cirilla blurts out their fighting strength, and the samurai snaps whether they're bosses, period, so the priestess says, "Yep." Saki lights up, because now it's no longer an E-rank job, even if it isn't like they can't stomp them anyway. The samurai grins and says it's a boss fight, so she'll finally get to prove herself. But then he can't help worrying because she's walking in way too cocky, facing a lord and a mage, and he's left wondering if she's taking them lightly. Cirilla snaps her head toward him and tells him not to worry about the girl. Mi chimes in, saying she might not look like it, but she's insanely strong, and the girl is even so confident that she's already certain he'll be shocked. He stares at her and thinks, if she's really as strong as they claim, this just got interesting, then immediately shifts his plans, because her ability is going to matter a lot when they start making decisions later. She says yes straight up and admits that if she has nothing to do, she feels like she's useless. The protagonist grins and tells her that's perfect. Then, during the next battle, the Lord will be with her, so she has to prove what she's truly capable of. The girl lets out a laugh and asks what he's even talking about, because he sounds like he's about to knock everyone out cold. Then the guy admits that was the plan, and Saki bursts into, "That's hilarious." He insists he wasn't trying to be funny, and I snap back that every time he attempts a joke, it lands like a disaster. Cirilla gets it. She fires off, "Where are our enemies?" and the hero shoots back, "Right here, straight ahead in the room in front of us." The girl nods, saying, "Good," then snaps at Saki not to let her guard down, and tells Mia they've still got one job left. "Take down the mage." Cirilla tells the guy, "Since you're planning to sleep, go on ahead." William nods, "I get it." The protagonist then glances at his companions and asks, "So, are we heading out?" They peek around the corner and bam, goblins swarm into view, so the protagonist strikes hard and hits them with sleep. Mia and Cirilla launch a brutal attack too. The latter frets that the spell won't land on a monster who's already fluent in magic, and that's why the mage has to be dealt with fast before things spiral. Goblin Mac is out cold, fast asleep, and the girls stare like, "Wait, it actually worked." Saki strolls up, greets him, and calls him a big boy. Then the goblin lets out a deep growl and slowly hauls himself upright. The girl yanks the katana free, rises to her feet, and snaps, "Begin." And the second she does, she starts to glow like crazy, leaving the protagonist staring in total shock. The monster bellows and Saki snaps forward with a sharp strike. She lands it clean, and blood pours from the goblin's wound. His knife gets blown out of his grasp, and his hand drops with it. Then the girl grins and says she wants to keep playing a little longer. She lunges in, screaming that she was told to show exactly what she can do. Samurai lunges forward and slices the monster clean in half. Half his body slips free and crashes down, and the girl just smirks like, "At least this was a little fun." She can't believe it, she just wiped out the goblin lord that easily, and judging purely from her melee skills, he's convinced her power is only D rank, or maybe, just maybe, C rank. The girl leans in and asks for Will's take. He's stunned, like totally caught off guard, and he admits it's something. She thrusts her fist toward him, and at first, the guy has no clue what it even means. The girl grins at him, and William instantly gets it, like the moment turns warm and he realizes, wait, this doesn't feel so bad after all. They smack fists and Cirilla declares the job's finished. Saki beams, saying it's finally time to grab their reward. Adelsha right outside the Adventurers Guild, everyone's livid, a full-on crowd of anger, and one man screams at them to track down the reason why the summer drained him of 1,000 gold coins, because whoever did it, he's making them pay. My AI forces her way through the crowd and blurts out what she just discovered. Then the girl pulls up the ad and insists, that has to be it, that's the reason. Saki blurts that it's a mass sleepover, and the real cause is still a mystery, then points out the whole city is knocked out cold while William just stays silent. Cyrilla tells them that every afternoon, nearly every villager dozes off at the exact same time, right in unison, and she can't stop wondering why. Even if it's not really her job to dig into it, her curiosity is burning. The protagonist stays tight-lipped for a beat, then blurts out that it might have been a sleep spell, and it spiraled out of control. Cyrilla snaps back that there's no way it couldn't possibly have made it this far. Saki grins and calls him a funny guy, and me fires back that this time, the joke is actually great, so maybe it isn't a joke at all. Suddenly, the protagonist spots the girl clutching 2 sheets of paper and blurts out what's on them. She smirks and tells him she has found a killer task just for them, then flips the papers around and reveals the challenge. Cyrilla points it out and says it's a village you can only reach after half a day of straight walking. Meanwhile, in this same village, houses crumble, people die, and someone can't hold it in. Why is this happening? The girl fires off the question again, and you can feel her spirit burning as she erupts in a furious scream. This is unforgivable. At the Adventurers Guild, Cyrilla blurts that nobody has managed to uncover the truth behind the dream incident, and the main crew in the back looks utterly crushed. He stays silent, clinging to the registrar's words, how that runaway sleep spell is total nonsense, while she's swamped with work and keeps urging him, don't joke around. My AI says she went and took the test, and Saki lights up, yelling that it's time to go, while the other adventurers murmur behind her. One of the guys demands to know why the main character is on their team, and the second guy admits he'd been dying to join them, while the main character just sits there silent, taking it all in, and then the girls walk out. The boy whips around and stares at them, thinking even if they're in different classes, the way they look, beauties, isn't even an exaggeration. So even if they were short one person, they'd still snag someone, and the moment it happens, the guy halts and demands, why'd you invite me? Mia asks if he's offering an invite to join the group, and Saki snaps back that it's because he is F rank. Then the guy pushes, asking why it has to be F rank, since he's sure plenty of people would jump at the chance to get in. Satsuki freezes in shock, and then she shoots back a firm no. She snaps that she doesn't care how tough they are, she'd never join forces with guys who stare at women like that, and then she adds, dead serious, that there were no other adventurers around. The protagonist stays shut up tight, and me shoots back that William isn't built like that. He understands what matters, that their missions come first, not their personal lives. Saki still doesn't get it, but she calls them lucky to have William, and then she swings with everything she's got. Bam, he smacks into the wall and slides down like a wrecked statue, leaving the men absolutely stunned. Cyrilla corners the girl and asks what she's up to, and the guy who'd been chatting earlier shrugs like, honestly, my own crew's not so bad either. She nods right along. She blurts out an apology, admits she never even realized she was using the aura, and the guy shrugs like, yeah, I figured you could. Cyrilla pushes to heal him, and he just nods. William says he spotted it while they were wiping out the goblins, and I'm shocked, because the aura is visible to the naked eye. The protagonist shrugs and says, yeah, it can show up depending on the case and how dense it is. The girl nods like she gets it, then falls quiet. She whips around to William and demands, got a second. Then she leans in for more everything about that aura. Satch huffs, I've already explained it to you a bunch of times. Mia says Saki's explanation is hard to follow, like it's tangled up on purpose. The girl tells her, I already said it. If I want my aura ready, I collect it exactly where I choose, then I aim it at night. The girl drives her knee up and shoves the ground with everything she's got, blasting a crater into the earth around her. She claims it's easy, but I snap back that she clearly doesn't get it. Cyrilla backs her up, and William's left staring in shock. Me is totally lost on what collecting even means, or where this aura is supposed to come from, because it's already inside every single person. The girl swears in her own head that aura just flows through the body. Then the protagonist steps in and clears it up. Unlike mana, the stuff you burn up when you cast magic, the aura is already there, circulating through you like it's part of your blood. He claims this way he won't grab anything from the outside and use what's inside him, because Sake is probably about collecting her aura, ripping it out, and moving it somewhere else. Sayuri says it's a good thing she never became a mother, and Mia agrees that it's easier to understand, because it doesn't feel like magic, it feels like pure control. Saki asks how he's doing, and I'm sitting there wondering why she's even checking. They stomp down the stairs and the girl lights up, saying the aura is incredible and she can't wait to learn how to use it. The guy asks her straight up if it's okay that she can't use it yet, then tells her he heard it's a must-have skill for high-ranking fighters, but since there are still F ranks, he can't see why she'd need to rush into it. The girl scowls and shuts her mouth, and Mi nods, declaring that Saki is just abnormal. Then the protagonist stares at her, totally confused. The girl blurts, "So what are we doing this whole time?" Mi grins and says, "This is all our sake, our reason." Cyrilla lines in and declares, "We're here to wipe out the undead." She blurts that the village got wiped out of nowhere, and that's why the zombies suddenly poured in, so they're going to wipe them all out, but the second girl shoots back and demands to know what caused it. Cyrilla explains that the undead don't just show up. Sometimes a body rots and rises when it never gets a proper burial, and other times a dark priest or mage rips the world open with forbidden magic. The guy insists it lines up with what he already knows because honestly, there are tons of theories about how the undead even show up. Then the second girl snaps back that she's lost, says it's way too complicated, and admits they still have zero clue why it happens at all. Cyrilla backs her up. The protagonist tells her no matter what, just remember there could be a dark priest or mage up ahead, and the girl's mind instantly races to that terrifying priest, cackling in her imagination before she blurts out, "So how strong are these zombies really?" What? Me points out the truth, goblins are first-rank monsters, so if they're weak, it's only because they're outnumbered, and once a whole village turns into zombies, you could end up with over 100 of them. So the girl is stunned at how pathetic they look. The second girl warns that if there are enough of them, they'll turn into a real threat. Then Saki blushes, and the girl paints the scene in her head. Saki trapped, surrounded by a crowd of zombies. The girl says we'll sleep spell will be super useful, but Will snaps back, sleep won't touch the undead, and they're a brutal match for any mage or resident. That's why wiping out the undead is exactly Ciri's specialty. The girl nods and agrees, so if there are more than 100 of them, he can tell her straight up, she'll need his help. The guy promises he'll come up with something, and Saki shoots back, "Don't stress, I'm right here, so it'll be easy." Mia stays quiet for a beat, then snaps her head towards Saki and begs her to listen to William and Cyrilla. Saki wraps her in a hug and swears she'll be a weapon once the fight kicks off, because she can wield her aura. Mi whips her tail into her head, and the girl instantly flies into a rage. Saki, still grinning, flares her aura, snatches her up, and tells her she's been playing way too much. Then Mi shrieks that it's cheating because Saki's using aura again, and the girl scrambles to break free. Cyrilla and William just sit there watching, and the girl fires off, asking what they're doing, then pushes them to get moving. She locks eyes with the protagonist, bursts into laughter, and says she can finally brag a little, just today, and the girl flashes a bright smile right after. The main characters blast the undead with a spell, and the girls can't even breathe from shock as the monsters get torched alive. Cyrilla stares at it like she's done arguing, then admits she finally gets Saki. Saki's sister presses, "Do you see it, Mary?" Cyrilla snaps back, "This is getting ridiculous," and Miai drops the bomb. That means there'll be a fourth shot now. The main crew huddles up, forms a brand new spell, then blasts it straight out. Boom, the undead burn. From up on the rooftop, a ghost stares down, watching the girl frown like something just went terribly wrong. Saki turns to Mia and asks if there's anything they can do. Mia shrugs and says hating is basically her way of fighting zombies, so she's good. But then the girl spots that her mood is still wrecked. Mia just laughs and admits, "Yeah, I have bad days too." Cyrilla leans in and asks, "So, is there a fifth shot?" And the protagonist replies, "That fireball guzzles mana, but yeah, a fifth is possible still. I want to hold my mana back." He says zombies are brutal opponents for mages. The girl nods and agrees, and Cyrilla chimes in too. Yeah, they trust the rest. Saki steps in for her friend and pushes her forward. Then me and William just stand there in silence until we lock eyes. The girl snaps that she'll just get in their way, because even if they slash their throats or stab their hearts, they don't die, and she's done with this. Then he watches the girls and says, "I saw Sokka's skills last time." Me tells her she's already done the basic training, so purely on combat power she's right on the same level as her. Then the kicker hits. She still hasn't even seen me go up against the undead. Cyrilla plants her spell into the air, lifts her staff high, and screams for the undead to get out. Then a blinding flash erupts, and the zombies get wiped out instantly. The protagonist tells him it was no small thing. If she can handle that many undead, she's got to be seriously experienced. Me just nods and says she gets him. And yeah, her choice is flawless, because she knows it slashes every possible risk, so she hands the rest over to Saki. Mi admits she's a little jealous, but you can see the sadness in her face, because the boy just can't read what she means, not yet. She finally tells him her job is easy to everyone else, so nobody ever thanks her, even when it looks like she's slacking off. They didn't see this coming at all, because from the very start, what blew him away was Mia's work as a thief, and of course she'd never know how much he noticed, since he never told her a word. You tell him she'll love her work, and he says, "I noticed your magic eye." The girl's cheeks go red, her tail starts wagging like crazy, and he gushes that she spots traps fast and hears everything. Then he adds that she's got serious experience. He even praises her for never whining about her routine or the dirty chores, and for jumping in on her own. Then she blushes and wags her tail even harder, and he finishes by saying she pulls her weight to keep everything running smoothly. He blurts out what's wrong, but she shakes her head, nothing. Then her cheeks flare red and her tail goes wild, wagging nonstop, and right after that she yells from downstairs, "We're done." So I tell her, grab what you need, let's finish this quest fast. Saki hums under her breath and Sarilla leans in, asking if it's good enough. Saki grins and says it is. Something streaks past them, totally unnoticed, and me suddenly remembers the tail slap that drove into Saki's face, because whatever it is, it's barreling straight towards Saki. Mia spins around and blurts everything to her friend, and before she can even finish, Saki launches a full-force punch straight into her face. The girl rockets into the sky and Cirilla's mind freezes as she screams for Mia, baffled by what's happening, while the guy's just as shocked. Saki jerks in place, demands, "What is that?" And then you see the girl's ghost hovering behind her, right where it shouldn't be. The samurai bursts into laughter and she goes, "Are you kidding? This is insane, look at this girl's body, it's unreal." Sarilla pours healing into Mia, then freezes when she calls Saki by name. Horror floods her face as Saki grins and says, "Now I can kill everyone." Saki bursts into loud laughter, flashing that Lyceum grin as she tells them to wait, because she's about to come over and slaughter them. William hurls a sleep spell and the girl crumples to the floor, then he snaps, "Mia, grab a rope, we're tying her up." The girl nods and agrees. The girl's finally tied up and the ghost just goes still, so Sarilla whispers that maybe it's the very ghost who once lived in this village, and the girl nods, confirming it. William admits he gets it, their friend's body has been taken over. Mia snaps, "So what do we do now?" Sarilla grins and warns them, if they walk away with regret or if they finally hit their goals, their souls will be cleansed and they'll vanish. The girl mutters broken thoughts about regret, purpose, rage, and hatred, then snaps that she'll slaughter them all because she's got to. Sarilla fires a question about what happened, and William snaps back that it's impossible. She snaps at him in pure fury, demands to know why, then drills him with, "What did we do that could possibly deserve this?" Sarilla tells everyone to calm down and demands the ghost explain everything first, then Mia snaps that William is cruel. He just doesn't get what she means, so the girl steps in and says the bandits are hiding near their village. And then they brutalized every woman and slaughtered them all. She says they're no different from monsters. She swears she'll get her revenge on them, and Mia and Sarilla whirl toward William. Then the ghost lines in, demanding to know if he'll finally let her go. The protagonist flat out refuses, and the other two girls stare because he sounds stone cold, no emotions at all. Then the ghost snaps, "Don't play me," and demands to know if they're teamed up with the bandits. Me fires back, "No way, we're not bandits, and neither are they." Sarilla yanks the guy by his lapels and calls him by name. Then he snaps back that the only thing that truly matters is the owner of this body. He explains it like a gut punch. No matter how tough Saki is, these bandits wiped out a whole village, over 100 people gone in an instant. And if they've got seasoned fighters in their ranks, then the odds are stacked hard against the girl. The ghost promises he can take them with him, but William snaps that they can't let that happen. No way they're letting Saki die because of some reckless move. The girl fires back by repeating everything he said about choosing a reckless death. She blurts out, "So what do I do in that case?" because she knows she'll just vanish without ever getting her revenge until Sarilla lanes in and demands her name. "I'm Felia," the girl says. The main character hesitated to reach out to the ghost, but it looks like she's finally willing to listen to those doubts, and that's a huge win. He snaps his gaze to the girl and tells her, "If you can set a fair reward, you can make your request." The ghost totally misses the point. William just keeps going, insisting they're adventurers. Saki jolts awake in some strange place, and Sarilla can't believe it. Saki's suddenly been taken over by a ghost. Me snaps that it's all because Saki never pays attention to anything, and that thought hits hard as the girl starts wondering, is she really that careless? She twists and spins on her feet, then blurts out that it's downright terrifying. Her body is moving without her, and in a flash, she convinces herself she's been possessed. The girl blurts out, "I'm sorry," and the second she realizes her goals are within reach, her panic melts away. While he can't stop wondering if ghosts can really be this collectible, Sarilla spots the church. The girl asks them to give her a little time, insisting she needs to pray for the village at least once, and the guy says, "I don't mind." Saki remembers her friend is a priest, so she guesses it might change everything, though she can't be sure. Philia thanks her, and Mi says she's coming too. Saki suddenly realizes she can't even hear her own voice, so Philia snaps, "Did you just notice that?" William leans in, asking, "Are we close?" Saki nods fast and blurts out that the gold is buried in the village elder's garden. He repeats her words and shoots back that maybe, just maybe, she's his daughter, but she shuts it down hard, saying she's been getting along with his only son ever since she was a kid. Saki slips into the girl's memories, seeing how a U figure gets through to Philia, begging her not to forget what lies at the base of that tree, because everything could change if it ever gets damaged. The girl blurts out that she wants to talk about it, and the young man fires back asking why, so she tells him that tomorrow they'll be together, and suddenly an image of her wedding crashes into her memories. Saki can't help but guess it's a ghost's memory. Philia says on this day listen to Cirilla's prayer, okay? And the protagonist suggests it could make her feel better, but the girl shakes her head, saying she doesn't want to step into the church. Cirilla freezes mid-step and starts shaking, then the Mais rush over and demand to know what's wrong. The girl spots a dead body, and it's still not turning into a zombie. Saki suddenly sees bandits smashing into a church mid-wedding, wrecking everything as the chaos erupts. Everybody's screaming and panicking. Phil shouts that the guy needs to bolt because an axe is about to strike and he gets killed, while the girl breaks down and cries. The bandit flashes a wicked grin and declares that he's finally stumbled on a real good woman. Saki is absolutely furious. Philia starts digging out a spot for a tree, then Cirilla swoops in with a stunning offer. The bride's place tied to the church will be Philia's. She snaps that it makes her so furious she feels like she's losing her mind, and the guy shoots back that justice is just relative. Then the girl explodes with rage at him. Even these bandits get caught in the mess of fate, so he says he wants to judge them, like he's ready to label them evil. He explains that feeling, then suddenly cuts off and tells her to forget it, only for the girl to nod and promise, "I'll remember." The bag bursts open and boom, it's packed with gold, and Me swears those 100 gold coins are right here, while Cirilla confirms every requirement has been satisfied. William lays it out, slip in, take down every last bandit, and you'll earn 100 gold coins for the job. Then he shoots the question out, so do we all agree to take Philia's request? Cirilla snaps that punishing people like that is no problem for her, and Me yells that they've got to get Sokka's body back. Philia blushes, shoots an apology, and tries to laugh it off, while Saki just stares in silence for a beat, then steps in and says, "I'm in this group too, so yeah, I accept your request." Saki told her not to fret about her body, she was only loaning it out for a little while. So she fires up Philia to keep pushing. The girl burst into tears, yet she still wipes them away just long enough to thank everyone. The bandit's house is quiet, too quiet. The guard snores in his sleep while the Mais above line up for the strike. Then the girl moves, silences him, and the other 3 adventurers rush in right behind her. Siri clocks the huge mansion the second she sees it, and they use the whole place as their hideout. Philia stares at the dead bandit, horrified, and Me listens closely. She swears she can hear a bunch of people snoring right by the entrance, but she can't tell if any of them will wake up in time. The girl warns that having someone experienced among them will be trouble, then whips her head toward Will and asks, "Can you use that magic eye spell you used on the goblin quest?" William says they rely on translucence. Sure, it guzzles mana like crazy, but it's totally worth it. Me starts plotting a sneaky peek, and Cirilla turns to him and asks what kind of spell it is. He blurts out that it's a spell, one that lets him look right through anything and into the whole mansion, no matter how far it's in reach. The girls freeze in shock again at his abilities, totally speechless, so the protagonist steps in and asks what's wrong. Cirilla insists nothing's the matter, while Mia simply says she has nothing left to say. They step inside and there's a whole nest of bandits passed out cold. The protagonist bows his head, apologizes, and tells them to carry on like nothing happened, but Philia, her jaw clenches and pure rage tugs at her twitching. Bandits are catching ZS, Cirilla swings her staff and drops them. Me slips between foes with a knife in hand, and Philia strolls right past William. He tells himself keep the same pace, and for the love of everything, stay dead quiet while we do it. Behind him, the girl yanks her katana from its sheath and slashes at the sleeping man. Cirilla and Mia stare at her, stunned, then she erupts in pure rage and screams at him to die. The girl lunges in and drives her katana straight into the bandit. He blurts out, totally confused. The protagonist stares at it, stunned, and Cirilla, she blurts out the same puzzled question too. Philia calls him a monster, screams for him to die, and drives the knife into him again and again. The other bandits snap out of it, and one of them blurts, "Wait, what is that?" The main characters throw a spell into the air, and the bandit just stares, clueless about what's happening. Cirilla tries to get words out, but nothing comes. Then panic hits as she realizes her own voice won't work because she can't hear a thing. Me spots the bandits as they rise up. She lunges forward, leaps over him, and ends him in an instant. The main characters think they battled from a huge room, and honestly, that's exactly what makes it feel so right. He even clocks that there's zero reinforcements, so he grabs at Cyrilla's attention as she snatches him up, gesturing like what happened. In panic, and he just knows they've got to bolt out of the magic zone. In a hidden nook, Cyrilla whispers to Philia that their secret is blown, but Philia doesn't even listen, and she only answers that she has to kill them all. Cyrilla blurts that all they can do now is cleanse her. Mias are stunned and ask, "Can you really do that?" The priestess snaps that her magic won't budge, but then she suggests one last shot. Haul her to the city temple and maybe it'll finally work. Behind her, the ghost keeps chanting Purification, and inside her, Saki loses it and screams her name. Philia pours out her regrets as if everything is finally purified. Then the samurai charges forward again, shouting her name like he can't stop. She says she finally heard her own voice again, and the girl snaps at her to pull herself together, because revenge is coming. Saki insists everything's going to be fine, and Philia calls her by name. Then she laughs and says, "With my body, it's gonna go bang, boom." Mia says she told Saki something like Saki, and Cyrilla fires back that they need to clean her up fast. Philia then calls out to Saki and demands what bang and boom even means, and the protagonist just assumes she's talking directly to Saki. They call out to her and the girl snaps into action, apologizing like crazy. Everyone's stunned, shocked she's even answering. She insists it was just sitting there. Me leans in and says Saki nailed it, and Cyrilla grins that the vibe is, of course, absolutely amazing. Philia insists she's fine, but the guy clocks it, she's still a bit out of it, while the girl inside has everything under control. Cyrilla and Mia crack the door open in front of them. Saki asks the girl what her boyfriend is like, and Philia snaps back, "Why are you suddenly curious?" The samurai looks stunned, muttering that girls always seem to love whispering about stuff like love, and the girl can't believe that's what they're talking about right now. Then Cyrilla and me jump in and cut down the bandits. Saki shrugs and says she's only curious what he was like, but the girl hesitates before giving any answer. She stares at William and says he's got a lot in common with him, and that's when Saki's cheeks explode into a blush. She blurts that she can't handle being stared at like that because it freaks her out. Philia blushes just as hard and snaps back that she's wrong. She tries to explain, saying, "I know, he's just like that," and the protagonist fires back, "Saki can give you a headache, but I work well," and me nods like, "Yep, she said it perfectly." He shouts for them to hurry, insisting this has to be the final room. Then Philia blurts that it's the last one, and asks to be the one who gets to go. William steels himself and thinks, "I've got to get rid of Philia's old attachment." The leader and his subordinates are already waiting in the final room, and if their power doesn't match Philia's, she'll be the one who struggles. He tells her to hold on for a sec, then promises he's about to boost her physical abilities. She nods and agrees, and Cyrilla says she'll bless her too, bringing her down just a notch. The girl starts to glow faintly and Cyrilla shoots back, "Everything's fine," urging everyone to push forward. William cuts her off mid-sentence, insisting it's not over. She nods, the priestess agreeing with him. They just sit there waiting for William's spells to finally bite, then Cyrilla snaps, "This is it, final battle." But the boy shoots back that he needs a little more time, so they all stew in tense silence, waiting again until he's done. When he finishes, he calls everyone to move out, right as Cyrilla swings back and smacks him in the back with pure rage. He demands to know why she did it and admits it straight up wrecks him. Then the girl snaps back that it wasn't for any reason. Mia just scoffs, calling them a weird little team, and they tell her that whatever happens next is up to Philia, so she's gotta keep moving forward. The girl nods and shoots back that she's fast, then she dashes out of there in a blink, and Cyrilla just lets out a tired sigh. They sprint after her and the guy snaps that they've gotta catch up fast. Me blurts, "What's wrong with her speed? How is she even outpacing me?" He grins and explains, "I boosted her. This is magic that massively cranks up the target's agility." What? They rush in and the air hits them with bandit screams. Someone blurts, "What's happening?" Then, right out of the room, one bandit drops down and begs them for help. Philia lunges in and drives the blade into him. Then she can't help wondering if he's just trying to flee. Before she can breathe, another thug swings an axe straight at her and roars, "Get it." The girl just reflects his attack, and the bandit blurts out in confusion. Cyrilla and I are stunned too, because somehow she pulled it off. The protagonist blurts out, "It's a force field," and before you can even blink, it snaps into a barrier that makes every normal hit bounce off like it's nothing. The girl whips around and drops the bandit, Mary. Then they stare at William and demand answers, and he tells them it's the enchanted weapon's magic at work. She blurts out that he's boosting the blade with magic, and the protagonist immediately backs her up. The moment magic hits, the sword surges in power, and it starts glowing like a blazing sunrise. He claims that if you tap the power of the soul the right way, then balancing those 3 spells perfectly is the key to unlocking the strongest effect. The man shrieks that she's a demon, begs her to stop, and pleads, "Please don't kill me." Then he snaps, "Do you even know who's coming for me?" The protagonist finally clocks it, people are backing them up, and it hits like a wave of hope. Phileas shrugs it off like it's nothing. She doesn't care who they are, as long as they end up dying by her hands. A bandit barrels toward her with an axe raised high, screaming at the top of his lungs. Then she lunges in too, slicing him apart into pieces, and just like that, the fight is over. Cyrilla, me, and William stare at the girl, and then she snaps, "Are you done yet?" At first she stays quiet, but then she finally speaks up, saying it's all over now, for real. She whirls to Saki and thanks her. Now she can finally go after him without a second delay. The girl spins around and locks eyes with her fiancé, then she says, "You're here, you came to meet me." She barrels into his arms, blurting how happy she is, then tears spill as she hugs him tight and whispers that she loves him. The girls let out a breath of pure relief, like the danger finally backed off. Right then they whip around to William and fire off, "How'd you get so close to Philia?" And Saki immediately throws her arms around him. William insists he did nothing, denies it all, and me blurts, "Is it really Saki?" The girl snaps around and asks if she's really her, then she bursts out that she's so happy Saki's back. The samurai tells her she's been leaning on her aura this whole time and orders her to finally rest, and the friend nods along as the girl asks for forgiveness for everything she caused. Mai tells Saki she owes her an apology, and Saki's like, "What are you even talking about?" Mai points out that Saki's the one who smacked her with that tail, then Saki bursts into laughter, finally realizing she'd been stuck on that moment this whole time. Mi shoots her a surprised look and tells the girl she doesn't need to apologize, and then the main characters suddenly spot a bundle waiting downstairs. He cracks it open and reads it, stunned. Cyrilla leans in and blurts, "What happened, and what is this?" William says that the letter isn't just paper, it's a written hit order, spelling out the date Philly's village would be attacked and demanding that every peasant be slaughtered. The girls gasp in shock. He says the reward is huge. Saki snaps, "Who gave that order?" And William answers, "It's got Count Goldart's name right on it." Cyrilla blurts out, "Who the heck is Count Goldart?" and immediately wonders if there was ever a duke with that name, then me pushes, "So the duke gave the bandits that order, right?" William answers, "Yeah, it was probably him." Cyrilla can't wrap her head around it. Why would the count happily torch his own territories himself? Saki blurts out, "What's wrong?" Saki can't believe how massive the castle is. She gapes and says it feels so roomy and even wonderfully cool. And in the heart of Ledaverg, the kingdom's capital, Mi proudly tells her, this is where the whole kingdom is centered. Cyrilla insists they're right, and she's so sure she looks like a total country bumpkin, even as the girl points out she's hiding it terribly. Saki yanks her friend onto her head and grins, saying she looks just like her. It'll be fun. Cyril snaps at her to stop, but the girl just laughs it off. The priestess then admits this is her very first time here. Saki blurts, "So why did we come all the way to the capital?" Mia can't believe she hasn't heard a thing yet, so she grabs Will and demands he explain it all. Saki. He tells them he reached out to the Institute of Witchcraft and learns someone was slipped to the Count as a wizard working right under the royal court. Her name is Alice Formilia. Then he leans in and asks if she's got everything so far, and Mia fires back that Alice is the real normal worker, unlike William. Saki can't stop thinking, how did I even reach them? And figures it must have been some letter, because the guy suddenly pulls out a thing and thrusts a mirror into Samurai's hands, only for Samurai to just stare, totally clueless. William calls her over to look, and she's stunned when she realizes it's a mirror. Then his reflection snaps into view and she blurts, "William, I can see you." The protagonist tells Mia that with these special mirrors, he can fire off messages through magic, and Mia shoots back, asking whether the Institute got mad when he chose to become an adventurer. But William snaps back that they'd better be furious, because he still remembers that night in his hotel room, and how, staring into the mirror, they asked with hope if he was sick of living as an adventurer. You shut them down fast and tell him you're not done with this, and when someone asks if he remembers that the assistant spot is still open for him, he just brushes it off and turns to the professor like, "Actually, I want to check something." The professor nods and says, "Sure." The protagonist tells Mia how he finally learned about Alice, but the moment he mentions it, there's this awkward pause. Mia can't understand why it hits so weird. William claims she's an absolute disaster, then drops the bomb that she submitted her thesis as a study on the spontaneous spread of low-grade zombies. Mia rolls in and calls her a sweet girl who's totally obsessed with zombies and thinks they're adorable. Then Saki steps up and rebrands her as a cool chick who's all about rocks and the undead. Sorella bites into a bun and blurts that magic powered by the soul of the dead is completely forbidden. Mi stares at her in shock, and Sorella whips around, screaming for her to look at the sandwiches because they're just too cute. She hands the girl a sandwich topped with a teddy bear, and the girl beams, saying she loves it. Saki snaps Juliana, what's the real deal with Alice and how she's undead? The protagonist cuts in, telling her not to mix it up. Alice is human, and they're the ones who are undead. Saki blurts that everything's crystal clear, but what does she mean by dragging us all the way to the capital of Roya just to cut down Alice? The girl's boiling mad, and the protagonist shoots her down with a blunt, negative reply. Sarilla blurts, why are you even going to cut me? First we've got to find Count Goldart. And Saki snaps, so you're saying we're killing him later? The protagonist shakes their head, flat out refusing. Mia snaps that killing someone without even checking the facts is a crime, but Saki fires back that this count is what arranged the bandits' attack on Felia's village, and this letter is the smoking gun, only for Sarilla to slam the brakes and say the real issue is the letter itself. She thrusts the food into her hands and barks, eat it. The samurai nods and takes it, while the tenant whispers that this is Count Goldart's order to the bandits, and if they deliver it to the wrong person, the letter won't even survive to be read. Sarilla admits William's right, which is why they came here. Then she snaps, but it's pointless, because Saki clearly doesn't get a single thing. Sarilla claims he'll end up someone powerful and even rubs in that they've got personal connections. Then the protagonist snaps back, I didn't choose this bond. That's when the priestess erupts in rage, grilling, so what, he looks good. Was he trained, skilled, and finally declaring, no matter what, he's just like a prince. The protagonist shrugs and says the guy just got dumped into the role of a prince, like it was nothing. Sarilla gasps, confused. Saki cuts in, asking if the boy really grew up here, or if he's just some kid from a big city, and Sarilla snaps, hold on. What? The protagonist blurts that he was born in the magic city of Lecter, then Sarilla snaps, wait, did you just say something about a prince? William doesn't miss a beat, insisting he stayed here until he turned 13 because of what his parents did. The main crew blurts out that they've arrived and they're right here, and when the adventurers look ahead, a massive castle towers over them. Then the girls gasp in shock as the main character steps up and says something straight to the guard. We can't believe it, this really is a castle. Saki nods along, and then the guard says something, and Williams abruptly hustles away. Mia can't believe it, the prince is actually showing up to meet them with no appointment, and Sarilla gasps like something just hit her hard, because the moment they settle in, they hear a voice in shock, Will's here. The girls stared in disbelief. Right in front of them stood a stunning beauty who said they hadn't seen each other in ages, asked how he was doing, then looked at the kids and wondered who they even were. The girls were totally lost, and the big question hit them, is this the prince? He snaps into introducing her as Eileen Glassero, this country's princess, then Sarilla grabs him by the shoulders and blurts out what princess even means. He tries to explain the prince's role, and Mie realizes she's been totally lost this whole time. Sarilla blurts an apology to the princess for the late reception, and the girl smiles, saying she's thrilled to finally meet him. The hero jokes that Eileen was a total mess back when she was young, and Sarilla blurts, why are you suddenly digging into the past? But they're stunned when he doesn't even clock their panic for 1 second. William tells Eileen that in this very yard they once swung wooden sticks like real swords, and Eileen snaps back that it was way back then. He still messed around with them and treated them terribly. The girl brags that she won every fight, and he smirks, telling her it instantly reminded him of those not-so-kid moves. Then he leans in and asks if she's positive she didn't use aura back then, and Saki is completely thrown. The girl bursts into laughter, nods along, and says she only learned about aura later, while Saki is just relieved because she hasn't run into anyone her age who can wield aura for so long. Eileen beams and tells him she's already seen this outfit in a military book, then guesses, straight out, that she's a swordswoman from the East Samurai country. Sarilla warns that this is about to turn into disaster. Then Eileen leans in and challenges Saki to a quick duel right now, and the samurai snaps back that she just came up with the idea. Mie clocks that the princess is secretly built like a powerhouse, and then Eileen flings her a stick and orders her to swing it. The girl snatches the thing out of the air and studies the wooden sword up close. Eileen flashes a wicked grin, and someone tells her to cook up an excuse for the loss she's about to take. Then she fires back with her own example, saying, I only lost because I'm not used to this weapon. Mia shrugs and says this looks like a totally pointless brawl, then whips around to William and asks who he thinks will win. He tries to dodge the answer, but admits it probably won't even turn into a real fight, and if they're talking pure combat power, he figures Satsuki's around a B rank. Sarilla is freaking out. She grabs her friend and demands if everything's really going to be okay, because she's terrified she'll actually hurt the princess. Then Satsuki darts in like lightning and yells, it's fine, there she is, right now. Eileen is even faster. She whips into motion and knocks the sword right out of her hands. Satsuki's brain can barely catch up to what just happened. Then the princess beams and hypes her up with a compliment about how insanely fast she reacted. She flashes a wicked blade in her mind, pressed right to the girl's throat. Cyrilla and I are left staring, frozen and speechless. The protagonist then explains, "That's why I warned you, it probably won't spiral into a full-on fight." Satsuki's heart pounds with fear, but Eileen eases her blade down, grins, and declares this is her victory. Because Eileen isn't just a princess, she's got real, unstoppable skill. They're already inside the building when Eileen announces she's a princess. No, wait, a knight too, and somehow that part makes sense. Meanwhile, Satsuki's planted on the couch, fuming like she's 1 second away from blowing up. William claims he's heard rumors, but the idea that the Imperial bodyguard can't even compare to your skills makes no sense, so the protagonist just laughs and Whitney cuts in, saying she doesn't need a bodyguard at all. Cyrilla blurts out something about the Imperial Knight, then quickly maps out the adventurers, ranks in her mind like a whole pecking order, because in her head, Eileen isn't just better than Satsuki, she's leagues ahead. Mia drops that bomb E rank, not even close to any chance, so hope dies on the spot. Satsuki's still seething, and the protagonist goes dead silent, then bluntly asks, "So you're E rank?" Mia tells him they've only cleared a single quest so far, and he answers that to level up to E rank, they've gotta earn 3 achievements on the right quest. Cyrilla swears his words are the truth and reminds William he's still stuck at F rank, but the girl just laughs. Then William snaps that she better not pull that face like she's mocking him, and Eileen jumps in, asking if William's getting teased because she wants to see it. Cyrilla is terrified of her, insisting she'd never dare act rude toward Mrs. Eileen's friend, and you can tell she's scared of what might happen next. The princess is totally thrown off, blurting in confusion that the girl is stubborn. The girl plops down beside the samurai and blurts that Satsuki is super frank. Eileen smiles, and the girl's rage suddenly explodes. Satsuki leaps up and dashes after her, while Mia snaps that she shouldn't use Satsuki as a battle criterion. Eileen keeps that teasing smile, like it's all part of her game. Satsuki jabs a finger at him, snaps that she'll never beat him again because next time he's not winning, while Eileen lets out a shaky, confused sigh. The girl snaps that Alina has driven her to pure irritation. Then Alina gets shocked when Satsuki suddenly grabs her cheeks. Cyrilla yelps in disbelief and demands to know what Satsuki is doing to the princess. After they clock the gap in power, the protagonist still admits, straight up, that she truly wants to win the next battle, and William can't help but stare in open shock. Mia then snaps, "Is this normal? And are you really sure you can just ignore it?" Satsuki crumpled on the floor, defeated. Eileen kneels, rubs his cheek, and demands to know why he's back again, like he must need help. William speaks up, saying, "We found this paper in a hidden stash left by those bandits." He shoves a document into her hands. She unfolds it on the spot and starts reading, and then horror hits her like a punch. Eileen's father steps up to William and grips his shoulders, telling him he's grown a ton since the last time they saw each other. William shoots back that it wasn't that long ago and points out the guy as Ship Andrew, while Eileen just stands quietly behind them, watching. King shoots a guess that those beauties are his teammates, Cyrilla and Mia, but when Cyrilla and Mia bow, Satsuki just won't. The king snaps that they need to stop being cruel. Cyrilla bows her head to Satsuki. Mia points out that they're standing in the king's palace, and the girl blurts that she's totally lost about how all this happened. Eileen whips around to her father and tells him to check the document, shoving the paper into his hands, and the king hums like he's suspicious, reads it, then addresses Eileen as a knight. Eileen answers with a bright, positive nod. The man says, "I'll leave it to you," and snaps that he's against outsiders being hired, but the king explodes. "They don't get to run wild in my country," and slams the paper down like it offended him personally. The king whips around to William and tells them, "Good thing you're here. If it weren't for you, we'd never learn the truth." Then he orders, "Now let me repay you," promising they'll receive everything they need so they can make the right move. Ellen blurts that she can't believe this is gonna earn her respect, and Satsuki shoots back that she's gonna be the one to hit this boy where it hurts, paying him back in his own coin. Mick snaps that they can't touch him because he's a nobleman and that they'd better not mess with his power. Cyrilla shoots back that it would be worth it, and then Count Goldart will finally get the punishment he deserves. And she admits Ellen and William are close friends. Yeah, she knows, but she's shocked the princess bought it so fast. The princess blurts, "It's Will." The room freezes in a super awkward silence, then the girl stammers out a defense, cheeks turning pink. The princess just nods, saying she's known him for ages and can tell he's genuinely honest. The girls stare in shock and freeze, saying nothing, and Eileen shuts it down too. He's not the kind of guy who throws out pointless lies. She can't even figure out why they're all glaring at her like that. That girl shot a smirk. Cyrilla found it adorable, and now she couldn't stop herself. She wanted to tease her. Eileen snaps that she needs to focus on her mission right now because she can't think of a plan, and she even says she wants brains like William's. Then the guy spins to her and tells her to start learning how to use people. The boy says the king gave her the go-ahead but warned her not to hire outsiders, and the girl snaps back that she got it. She could hire adventurers like them instead. Sarilla says it straight, no riddles. William swears he wants to hear every word till the very end. Satsuki lights up because she finally gets to punch that guy herself. And Mie hesitates, not sure she can pull it off, but she's saying it right now. They're going to see this through to the end. Eileen declares they'll lock this in, and the adventurers nod along like, all right. Then the princess smiles and promises she'll take care of every formality by tomorrow. Methinks Satsuki snaps that it'd be a disaster if all they had were F ranks, and Sarilla jumps in, saying they should turn this quest into an official guild job. Eileen snaps that turning all of this into something official is a nightmare, but they can still handle it under the radar, while William grins and suggests they might as well label it as misappropriation of the royal fortune. William tells her, you need to thank me. If we pull this off, I'll climb right up to E rank. And when the girl sees his face, she realizes he's buzzing with happiness. Suddenly, he spots something looming overhead. Eileen clocks it too and quickly fires off a question about what it is. He looks over and goes still like he just figured it out. Then he answers the unspoken question with a firm yes, while a man looms above them, staring down. He spots the princess. Tam shoots him a wave. The man dips into a bow, then slips away fast. Satsuki immediately fires off, who was that? The protagonist leans in and tells her straight up, this man is the head of the Circle of Mages. Satsuki blurts out who it is, and Sarilla snaps back that this mage sits at the very top of the hierarchy. The protagonist tells them, don't mistake me for some perfect person, I'm not as good as I look. The girl presses, are you sure, and dares him to meet her face to face himself. Then the protagonist shuts it down with, no, you don't need to do that. Mie can't stop wondering what just happened, while Eileen blurts out at first that she's lost, then suddenly realizes he's William's father. Sarilla and Mie are left staring in total shock, and even Satsuki is still like, wait, what? What? Sarilla fires back, asking why he never shares something this important. Satsuki snaps that this is the first time he's ever spoken ill of anyone. Sarilla admits that once she finally said it out loud, she truly gets it too. Then Eileen cuts in, trying to fix the mess, grumbling that he always takes on too much and begging everyone to watch out for him whenever they can. Mie gives a shy nod and Sarilla plus Mie promise to watch over him, but Satsuki is still totally clueless. Then the protagonist snaps, asking if they can stop staring at him like that, and he's left completely baffled. Sarilla insists they take him straight to the tavern. Mie snaps back, asking if he heard what Eileen just said. Then Satsuki tells the princess goodbye for tonight, promising they'll meet again tomorrow, and the princess happily agrees. Many years back, young Eileen marched up to William and begged him to play, but he refused coldly, then declared he only wanted the sequel. The girl blurts out, why are you still reading that travel book? And before he can answer, she grins and says, I know exactly what'll pull you in. Then the little princess swings in with one word, adventure. The boy snaps the book shut, still hooked, while little kids roam the abandoned ruins. The girl yells, Will, come look, and urges him to explore, but he shrugs and says they're only a former church. The girl fires a question, are you having fun? And the boy grins back, saying, come on, if you really think about it, it's fun. Eileen's face lights up with pure joy. She grabs the main character by the scruff of the neck and barrels forward, and the girl declares that it means they're adventure partners. And what about Eileen calling someone? A woman starts screaming her name and William's father goes, now I finally get where they are. The girl drops her hope, sighs, and looks let down. The man tells Eileen, your teacher's waiting, and she smiles, saying, we'll play again later. Then the boy chimes in, super sure, next time definitely we'll play again. The man whips around to his son and urges him to call Eileen the right way, Mrs. Eileen. She starts shaking her head and insists, I'm fine, everything's okay, we're still friends, and he remembers how she once called them adventure buddies. He goes quiet for a beat, then tells her, we'll talk later. Even after his father's orders, the boy keeps calling her by her first name, like he's daring the universe to stop him. Then anger sparks in his eyes, and he fires back at his dad using his first name too. Eileen nods along, agreeing with him, and flashes a bright smile. The now grown-up girl catches herself dreaming, thinking, one day we'll run wild and go on real adventures together, but deep down she knows it's just a joke, and when the adventurers finally come and go, she smiles sadly after them. Together, the main crew crashes into new adventures, and she calls it wildly sweet, until her princess status slams the brakes on any adventure with William. They accepted the princess's mission and stormed out of the capital right away. The princess in training asks, so how many days has it been? The girl beside her shrugs and says, only 2. Then she groans that there aren't any enemies to fight, and it's already getting painfully boring. Meanwhile, the third girl can't stop wondering what Sarilla is really waiting for. She nods along with her friends and shoots back, did anything happen? Then they all stare at the two people standing right in front of them, and that girl's mind immediately races, wondering what kind of bond they've got. Cyrilla snaps that she was dumb to hope for anything about love and all that girly chatter, and the other girl fires back that this talk is splitting into two totally different directions. The girl in front blurts that they still don't know if he's serious, then grills them about tactics, how they should hit him, while the guy just shrugs and says he'd rather charge straight at him. He just wants to slip into his residence quietly to question him, then he spots something out of nowhere. Eileen can't help but wonder if it's magic, and he tells her the truth. This is a magic circle, and a spell in the middle keeps warning its maker about any weird movement happening in the world around him. The protagonist blurts that there are 3 of them, and every single one dwarfs a human. Then the girl immediately figures the monsters must be lurking nearby. William admits he can't say for sure if they're monsters or not. Then my ears start twitching, and she nods like she feels it too, because they're creeping closer to us, slow and steady. Saki swears his ears are still as amazing as ever, even though Cyrilla has no clue what he's talking about, because she's watching him pull out that weird magic again. He says his anxiety only fires off answers when someone crosses the spell's edge. Then he pets the girl and admits his power cuts out there, so Mia's ears become the key. The girl stares at him like he's weird, and William finally clocks it. His fingers have been unconsciously petting her, and he realizes what makes beastmen different. Mia snaps back that she doesn't have that kind of peculiarity. Cirillo can't stop wondering what kind of creatures these are, especially if they dwarf a man, so he looks at the guy and the guy says, "I'll check." He lifts his staff, murmurs a spell, and everything turns see-through. He spots 3 monsters, only for the guy to grin and say they're 3 orcs, and the main character snaps to the girls, warning that if they don't act right now, they'll run straight into them. The girl snaps that orcs should be treated as F-rank monsters, then Saki practically bursts with excitement, and the boy counters, saying they can just let them slip right past. Saki blew up in rage, and the girl beside her shot back that if they run into any peasants or anyone just as powerless, they'll cut them down on the spot. "We have to wipe them out right now," she demanded. Saki says that after all this waiting, they finally get a chance to kill time, square up and fight. Then she tells the girl to play the part, be a princess, and just sip her tea. The girl shoves her aside and snaps that she doesn't care what she says, because any monster could be a threat, and then she demands the other girls step back and let her handle it. The rest just stare in horror. Saki yanks her back and fires, "What did you just say?" Both girls explode with rage, then the orcs peek from behind the trees. Cyrilla seethes while Mia stands there, completely baffled. The hero unleashes spells on the orcs, and in seconds they slump into a deep, helpless sleep. One of the monsters whips its head back and forth, snaps free of the guy's spell, and charges them like it's going to war with a savage roar. Eileen yells that there's still one left, and Satsuki grins, "That one's mine." She's ready to strike. Alenso lunges in from behind and snatches her. Saki yells at her to let her go, then snaps that she thought they were the same, right as the second girl freezes in horror. Saki presses her further, demanding what kind of confusion she means. The girl shrieks that she's hiding something, and the second one blurts, "Are you crying?" Then Cyril and Neva get dragged into it. Someone demands what the 2 of them are doing there. The main heroes shout the spell again, and he fires a storm of magic arrows right at the orc. "You hit the target," Me lunges in, shouting that he'll handle those 2 sleeping fools, while Cyrilla seethes with rage, saying nothing at all after a while. The girl snaps at the other 2. Eileen blurts that she doesn't want to hear a word from her, and when she glances at her chest, surprise hits her like a shockwave. The girl shrugs and says, "Anyway, I think you're having a rough time, Saki," and Saki goes quiet. Then Cyrilla blurts out again, apologizing as she asks if they're talking about the battle. The girl blurts that the size gap is absolutely massive, and Cyrilla can't help wondering if they're talking about a fight. Then the guy jumps in and asks if he can just tag along, and Nii snaps back fast, warning him not to even try that. The protagonist starts to talk about the vibe of the conversation, then slams the brakes and goes, "Nah, this is the perfect time for a silly little joke." She snaps at him, "Don't you dare," then grabs control and tells him to leave it to her, right as she marches up, calling the girl princess, and then Elaine. She stares right back, and that little girl fires the truth, "Big people have no charm." Eileen spots it instantly. Mia's got 0 curves. Then the girl with those ears tells her to sharpen her own charm. And as she hears it, Eileen can't help thinking with absolute certainty, she's the boss, the master. She vows she'll do everything she can, and Mia urges her to throw herself into it. Then Cyrilla pipes up that she feels totally left out. Saki just breaks into a laugh, reassures her, and jokes that even grown-ups still have their own messes. The young men burst into the city of Golier, and the girl beside them starts to speak right to them. She asks him how many people should go stake out Count Goldard's residence, and he answers with a calm smirk, only him and Elaine should go for a peaceful chat. though he can't stop worrying about the court magician, Alice. After graduating from the Institute of Witchcraft, she's got the title and the power to cast like a true wizard and use most of his spells too. Cyrilla points at the mansion and fires a question at Eileen. Is this Count Goldheart's place? Eileen squints and says, yep, it looks like it. Will tells the girls he's heading out to check things, then orders, wait right here, and when one girl asks, what about me, and points at herself, Will smirks, this is just recon. He throws a spell out like it's nothing, and Cyrilla blurts, so that was magic. Mia nods hard, saying, yep, same wild stuff as before, like when he took down the orcs with that other strange magic. The guards are stationed by the gate, and the protagonist strides up to them, but they don't even flinch. Cyrilla, watching from the side, whispers that they can't feel him at all. The Mies, who have been watching too, spot what the spell really does, and the moment they get it, they're sure every thief in the world will come scrambling to grab it. The protagonist fires off another sense magic spell, and the girls around the corner gasp like they can't believe he just did it again. He leans out one of the building's windows and stares, like he'd predicted, because the alarm is blaring even in calm days like these, right in the heart of this dome. He snaps a look-through spell and boom, there's a stunning girl sitting at the table, and he blurts that she's Alice Flamelia. Cyrilla grills Mia about Alice, and Mia's sure she's got sorceress powers too, then it hits. The enemy already tried to steal their ally's will, and they're no pushover either, because this wizard is downright powerful. Cyrilla can feel the nightmare coming, and she blurts out that anyone who graduates from the Institute of Witchcraft is probably a little unhinged, because they all remember that woman who joked around with something truly strange. Will's silhouette suddenly flashes beside the girl. He mutters, all gloomy, asking if he's really that strange. Cyrilla and Mia snap to attention, shocked they didn't expect him to show up so fast. The guy blurts out an apology for showing up so suddenly, then admits it's totally baffling, because once the girls learn about him, this won't ever stop. Cyrilla snaps back that if he hadn't spoken up, they'd never have found out a thing. Mia still feels that presence hanging around, and it sends chills down her spine. The guy tells the girls to head back to the Frono Hotel, but Cyrilla keeps staring, confused about where William disappeared to this time. Then Mia jabs her finger straight at him. Suddenly, Satsuki froze in shock and demanded to know who those girls were talking to, because if you didn't get what was happening, you'd swear they weren't even there, while Nia annoyedly pushed William and ordered him to remove the spells. Eileen was genuinely thrilled from the very start that she could see William as clearly as she could in the daytime, maybe because she'd always truly understood him. They end up in Eileen's room at the hotel, and the guy tells the girl he can spot lies the second they're spoken. With this skill you can sniff out who's lying in seconds, and everyone swears it's a terrifying spell, until the guy steps in, calm and confident, telling them he won't waste it on innocent people just for fun. Cyrilla's convinced Alice can cast it too, so there's no way they're lying now. Then one of the girls blurts out that it's actually super simple, and they swear they've got no evil intentions. Suddenly the girl imagined herself in Alice's spot, and right before any real trouble started, she figured she'd bolt or flat out refuse to spill a single bit of info. She could just reel them in, invite them back to her place, then vanish like the earth swallowed her whole. Eileen's betting the commander would totally fall for it. The girl tells Cyrilla, I saw Alice today at the residence. Cyrilla leans in and asks, did that guy look at her with magic? Will nods, yeah, and when I spoke to the Institute, I even heard a few things about how she looks. The guy whips around to Eileen and demands what she knows about the court wizards who serve Count Golderath. She just shakes her head and shuts it down, talking only about Alice. The guy is convinced it has to be Alice, but Eileen snaps back, let's wait until she's done. Will nods and says, yeah, it'll take a bit, but it's the safest move for now. Then he leans back, already locked in, and keeps hammering out a plan for tomorrow. The next morning crashes in, and Mia jabs her fists together and asks Will if he can turn her invisible. Will grins and says he can set the invisibility level exactly how she wants, and that the same guy even used a spell to hide the very presence of a magical seal. Mia is blown away, then Will tells her it's a sensory magic spell that snatches the magic out of the air. Mia goes, so it hits you like a storm of smells like that time with the orcs, and the guy finally realizes she's talking about magic arrows. Will started breaking it down. The higher the mage's level, the more arrows he could unleash. Mia snapped at the guy to stop talking, and the guy actually shut up. The girl blurts that the second she opens a book, she's out cold, no time to finish her sentence. Then she spots a guy slipping out of the building, snaps her finger, and tells him to look away. Alice steps out of the yard, walks right up to the guard, and tells him she'll be gone for 2 or 3 hours like always. Then the guards warn her to take care of herself. William and Mia clock the timing and realize they've got the same 2 or 3 hours, and it feels like she's coming straight for them. Before they can react, William lunges, grabs the girl, and runs. William strides up to Mia and asks, straight-faced, if he can keep the surveillance on her while he's gone. The girl shot daggers at the guy and snapped if he was laughing at her, and he hurriedly apologized, begging to finish, but Mia wouldn't let him, and she stormed off to chase Alice. The girl talks about telepathy, being able to hear only your own thoughts, like mind-reading with no other voices in the room. Cyrilla swears those spells are packed with power. Satsuki snaps, then why give us a mirror? And Eileen finally answers, because you can't make contact without it. Eileen's convinced it's so all three of them can finally talk together, and she's pretty sure it's also to save Mana. Eileen stared into the mirror and saw nothing but her own reflection, until William suddenly burst onto the surface, shouting that Alice was on the move and telling Eileen to come to him. Eileen tells Satsuki and Cyrilla to grip the mirror tight and keep their eyes wide open. They nod in agreement, then promise to reach out the moment anything happens. The girl finally reached her destination, then turned back and thanked William for standing there and waiting for her. He clocks that Eileen's dressed in night clothes like it's the most normal thing in the world, and she shrugs, it's for safety. Eileen heads out to track down Count Goldorath, and William stops her for a moment, saying he needs to use telepathy on her, so Eileen nods and agrees. Meanwhile, inside Count Goldorath's residence, the man can't shake the feeling that nothing good is brewing. They got hit with a whopping 1,000 gold loss from that carriage disaster, and the high feudal lord took the blame and did all the work, so the servant stepped in, told the count to calm down and stop dragging himself like that, but the count snapped back that he's only a lazy feudal lord's son. No matter what, the count vanishes and dumps all the annoying work on Alice, then the servant grumbles that she sometimes scares the life out of him. The servant keeps replaying a village full of bandits, then blurts out what the master will do if a fight erupts, only for the count to grin and say he'll just take care of everyone. The servant figured the count just had a soft spot for the girl, and the count nodded along, then insisted, yeah, she's unbelievably beautiful. The count's convinced that if the girl goes and does something wrong, there's nothing anyone can do because they're not even connected. And the servant's stunned since she likely works under the count's name, meaning if trouble hits, he's the one who'll get dragged into the blame. Suddenly, the second servant bursts up to the count and blurts out that Knight Eileen of the Glaceroad family wants to meet him again, making the count's eyes widen in shock, like he's just realized why this meeting is happening. Eileen and Will ended up at the count's themselves. Eileen even apologized for barging in so suddenly. Then she explained she'd come straight to ask Count Goldorat about just one thing. He says that the moment he heard the name Knight Eileen, he figured something was coming, but he never expected the princess herself to show up. And the servant thought it was downright strange how he acted, since Alice wasn't even home. They were hemmed in by servants and guards on every side, and the count demanded they sit. William's mind raced. Last time he saw her was back in the kingdom's capital, when she was still just a little girl. And now Eileen has blossomed into a stunning girl, so the count couldn't help but stare in shock at what he was seeing. William knows Eileen stands out for a reason, and it only makes the whole incomprehensible vibe hit harder, but honestly, he loves the atmosphere here. Will telepathically tells Eileen the preparations are done, and the moment the message hits, she understands everything. The count leans in, asking what the princess wants to say, while William and Eileen lock onto their first mission, getting this thing done with Count Goldart. The count looks like he's suddenly in the wrong world, so Eileen steps in and tells him she wants to question Alice, the sorceress, about her last name. The count already knew the girl was going to corner him about it, so he told her that Alice is gone right now, but the princess can wait for her comeback. Eileen immediately saw the trap and snapped that this was a bad idea, refusing to take the chance. William shoots the girl a calm-down look and tells her to breathe. She admits she's still a bit shaky, so the guy reminds her to lock in and remember how she trains with a sword. The girl's smile vanished, darkness swept her face instantly. She stared at the count like there was no room for jokes. A chill crept over him and he couldn't shake the question of why Alice bolted right now. Then Will snapped at Eileen to make the Earl get it. If it ever came down to it, they had to be ready to give Alice up, and Eileen nodded, understanding. The girl fires a question at the count. Does he know what Alice has been up to? And the count, his confidence slipping fast, admits he hasn't had a clue about her latest moves. William realizes the count has already started lying. Yeah, even if it's just a glitch in his magical vision, every word still reeks of someone scrambling to defend himself. From the count's side of the story, it looks like he can dodge interrogation, or he'll have to silence Alice, because this girl claims she knows something about her. She whispers to the count that Alice might have been practicing how to raise undead in a nearby village on their land, and that's why the village vanished. Alice's eyes stay locked on him, and that terrifying stare makes the count's fear spike even higher. William's eyes widen. He's sure the count has totally snapped, and he's scrambling, wondering how he can possibly escape from this place. Then boom, Count Goldheart erupts in a furious scream, refusing to believe Alice pulled this off. Impossible, he snaps. William can't help it, he's shaken, because the guy didn't even hesitate for a second when he answered. The boy has zero doubts the Count is lying his face off, but he can't shake the question, why spill those words at all? Because from the very start, the Count was already setting his sights on renouncing Alice, and William is convinced of one thing: this Count is the real criminal lurking behind the whole mess. The Count swears he's done nothing wrong, and orders Alice to be handed over right now. William is about to read the Earl's mind, because in that man's head, he's not just important, he's a prized jewel the royal family should keep close, and the people he loves should cherish. Yes, he can do no wrong, and he won't let anyone get away with evil like that. William finally clocks it, no reaction at all. He can't stop asking himself why the villagers got wiped out and whether there's a secret meaning buried in it. And then it hits him: this guy isn't someone you can underestimate. In his head, he tells Eileen, I cracked why those villagers were massacred, but there's still one piece that keeps pulling my attention. Then he presses her to dig into his motives too. The girl promised she'd give it her best shot, while the guy bristled with doubt. Was there another kind of magic that could block him? And when he looked at the Count, his gut told him he'd seen that face before. The Count couldn't stop wondering, if Alice came back, would guilt hit him like a punch? The Count can't help but wonder, can he really pull this off against a mage like Eileen? The Count whips his head toward the princess and declares that Alice is the court magician. Then he growls that if they let her live, her next move will rake in even more victims. The Count tells them to hold tight until Alice storms back to the mansion, then they'll hit her with a brutal surprise attack. He turns to the princess and demands her help. The girl fires a message straight into Will's head, asking if the Count truly plans to just handle Alice after wiping out the village, and the guy instantly nods in agreement. Will gets deep in thought and asks Eileen if she can take down the 3 knights lurking behind the Count and keep him safe. She smiles and swears they don't stand a chance. Will nods, then lanes in and demands they keep digging until they uncover the truth behind his motives. Eileen yanks her sword from its sheath, and the Count freezes like he just got hit, cold sweat spilling down his face instantly. Then Eileen stares him down and tells him a terrifyingly powerful magician had been standing right beside her. The man leans in and clears it up, talking about a robed mage clutching a bizarre staff. The Count went pale at this and demanded, why didn't I see the magician? The girl, eyes full of hope, swears they're about to expose the man's lie, because he remembers Alice talking about a spell meant to detect falsehoods. The Count is convinced he has to act, and right then, boom, the princess gets intercepted by William, who snaps the truth into her. The Count tricked her. Eileen was so furious it was practically boiling over, and she snapped that the Earl really wanted to wreck her trust in Will. Then she warned him to watch his step, because one wrong move and he'd lose his head right there. The Count snapped in a shaking voice that the princess and the magician must be taken together, and he promised the servants could have as much money as they wanted. The 3 men snapped their eyes to the princess, then Will yanked his staff and went on the attack. Suddenly one of the men blurts in a shaky voice, no, this can't be real. He blurts out that they can't take down a real knight at all, they're just dressed for show, and the Count is stunned because he swore they were strong. The guard just shrugs and admits, we're only guards. The Count drops to the floor and howls in rage, screaming why it had to end like this. Then he snaps that evil is hiding among them and points straight at Alice. He insists he did nothing wrong. It all clicks for Will. He had doubts before, but now everything lines up, no more running in circles, and the girl realizes that this Count is nothing but a complete fool. The guards were hogtied in the corner, and the girl shot the Count a question. Why did he punish the people who lived on his turf? The man snaps that Alice duped him, blurts out that he'd already turned to Eileen, then quickly catches himself and admits that Alice told him too. Eileen demands to know why the Count is slaughtering innocent people just because his court magician ordered it. Aren't those the very people he should protect? The Count finally tells her there's a reason. He tried to win Alice over, but she didn't give an inch. She laid down strict conditions for him to meet. Eileen refused to believe her ears. Then the man started clarifying that he meant the woman's clothes, and Eileen snapped, already ready to deal with him. Will says he gets the man's mindset, but he can't wrap his head around how that alone could be enough to call for the village's destruction. He tells him that Alice promised this. If she could push her research forward, then raising an army of the undead wouldn't be a fantasy anymore. Rage boiled in Eileen to the max. She clenched her fists like she could choke the anger back, yet she was already marching toward the Count when Will snapped into her way and demanded she calm down, even though Eileen knew she shouldn't be furious. The girl spotted his hand on her shoulder and her cheeks flared, but she steadied herself. Then the Count snapped right back to talking about clothes. A few heartbeats later, magic took hold of Count Goldart, and he started confessing to everyone, bluntly bragging that he was a total loser. After that carriage worth 1,000 coins smashed into the ground, his entire life spiraled straight into disaster. Will waves Eileen aside for a second, and the guy starts spinning his story. Then Eileen's eyes widen as she finally realizes he was telling the truth. Now the boys piled into Mia's place, and Mia's sister lit up, because at last it was time for the final boss. Eileen, though, dug in and said she wanted to stay right there, because someone had to keep an eye on the count, so the girl called Eileen over and told her to come with them. Eileen says this is exactly why she loves the girl, but she has to look after Will, because she won't let anything happen to him. Satsuki blurts out, "If you're that worried, why is Eileen coming with us?" Satsuki grips tight, then the girl snaps that it's time she finally learns how to listen. Eileen just smiles and urges Satsuki to make this place feel safe and great. Eileen waves the boys goodbye and Will grins as he promises, "We'll be back before you know it." The girl points out that Alice's tracks head straight to that spot by the warning barrier. Will nods right away and says the distance to Alice is now roughly 50 meters. Satsuki tells her just break the barrier and walk right in, but the girl doesn't get the excitement and flat out shuts her down. Will says that if they draw the barrier's attention, it'll spot them, but if they sneak past everyone's notice without a single eye on them, they might slip through. The girl gets it instantly and tells him, "You don't have to hide just to stay unnoticed," but Will doesn't relax. He warns that this could be a trap and pushes the idea of using projectile deflection or mana for the fight that's about to hit. The girl tells the guys, explain the trick, how the shots get deflected. Then Will just grins and says it's magic shielding them from every projectile, and as long as the enemy never grabs the ballista, they're untouchable. He says he wants to lay off all the big, high-level magic for now, because this magic battle is basically going to turn into nothing more than a straight-up reading showdown anyway. Will is trying to fool Alice into thinking he's just a beginner mage, while Satsuki snatched a sprig of cattail and started speeding up behind Mia. The girl smirks and says stealth will be plenty, she'll even handle the traps for Mia, so the guy nods along like, yeah, that's exactly what makes sense. Meanwhile, Alice snatched a pen and started scribbling down every detail. She snatched her staff the instant the barrier started reacting to 4 people, because if it had been just one, she'd have chalked it up to some lost rat, but Alice knew better now, she was being tailed. The magic eye skill comes out fast. The boys march down the road and Will raises a magic arrow, snapping Alice's guidance out of the way like it never mattered, while Alice is left staring in pure disbelief. She knows that magic eye is smashed to pieces, and she also realizes the mage was using detection magic. Still, only someone who's walked away from the Institute of Witchcraft can become an adventurer mage. And now the girl's left staring at all of this, wondering what she's supposed to do with them. But the idea barely had time to form, and the girl is already convinced she has to try one method. Satsuki demands to know what it was. Will guesses it was probably Alice's magical eye, scrambling to figure out who had just barged in, so the girl rushes over and asks if it's really okay to charge at him head-on like that. Will tells them that magic can sniff out magic arrows. These are just the very first spells. He'd only fire one magic arrow to make Alice think he's a rookie wizard, but it looks like their whole plan backfired. Mia insists they keep moving, and Will nods like, "We're ready, get set for the surprise attack." The girl pouts and blurts out that maybe it's time she learns some magic too. The boys bolted forward without warning, and William spun to the girl, grinning, telling her that if she wanted, he had over 100 beginner magic books, because among them, the easiest topics were the ones he could hand her right away. Suddenly, Satsuki hooks his attention, yells at him to look ahead, and promises they'll talk later. He nods and agrees. The boys burst into an abandoned old house deep in the forest. Will is convinced the barrier's core is hidden in this tiny shed, while the girl thinks Alice is here digging into the undead, so she's left wondering what Alice really wants and why she's pushed this far, breaking the ban to get it. After he dug into the undead at the Institute of Witchcraft, he's convinced that Alice Flamelia caught her interest for a reason, like something had to provoke her. He remembers getting warned that they were both troublemakers, and somehow becoming an adventurer felt way better than breaking that forbidden taboo. Mi lands beside the boys and drops the news. Her recon is done. There's not a single person anywhere, not inside it either. Everyone gasped when the barn was totally empty, and the girl nodded. Yeah, she noticed something creepy after all. The doors swung wide, empty as a ghost town, just an open entrance pulling you deep underground, glaring against the silent interior. Everyone's totally suspicious, and Satsuki clocks something's off. Sense magic can't spot a thing, and that's just bizarre, so he demands to know why it ends like this. The girl blurts out, "Let's just peek in the basement real quick," then remembers they can't afford to burn any mana. Will was about to lock eyes with that killer stare, but the girl snapped at him on the spot. He realizes the spell costs a ton of mana, but he bites the bullet, because right now he has to do it, and the descent below looks surprisingly safe. The boys dashed down the stairs and found a door, and it was the only door in sight, so Will was sure Alice was behind it. Then he grimly admitted the visibility was painfully limited. And that offensive magic won't even get close to landing on them, unless Alice grabs a bow or something similar. She says they won't get hit by spells right away, then Satsuki pushes the guys to kick off the mission and wipe it out. William can't stop wondering if Alice is really evil, because to him, justice isn't some fixed rule, it bends with whoever's holding the truth. Meanwhile, Alice is stuck in the dungeon when she suddenly hears a noise creeping up behind her. A weird little pet that looks straight out of a skeleton scampers up to Alice, wagging its tail like it's thrilled to see her, and nudges closer so she can pet it, while Cyrilla, chasing the truth of justice, feels her faith start to tremble. She talks about how darkness feeds madness and twists justice into something unrecognizable. An awkward silence crashed between the guys, and nobody knew what to say. The girl blurts out that she's a priestess of Atona, the goddess of light and justice. William instantly gets it, like it clicks on the spot, but Satsuki is lost and can't understand a thing because she's convinced Will is really against beating Alice. With a little hesitation, Will finally says he's in after all, and the girl smiles like that was the perfect question. The guys swing the doors open, and Satsuki realizes it's time to strike. They yank the door open, and bam, there's a heap of bones, carcasses stacked around the room, lanterns blazing on the walls, and Alice standing right there, staring at them. Meanwhile, the woman was nowhere near William's group. The boys stared in shock because that girl was insanely far away. Mia couldn't wrap her head around it. The woman had been standing out there this whole time, waiting for them, and Will even noticed magic shimmering on the wall behind Alice. Mia yanks Will by the sleeve and tells him that the wall behind Alice feels weird in a way she can't even explain, like it's not really there at all. Alice greeted the adventurers and shot them a grin. Did they like the research lab? Then she leaned in and said they could come by any time because their bodies would be incredibly useful for her research. Cyrilla blurted out that these ridiculous jokes had to stop right now, then snapped, asking if the woman wasn't ashamed of her own words. Alice clocked the girl's aggression and realized the guys hadn't stumbled onto this place by accident. Cyrilla fires off a question: why does the woman want to get a little closer? Will immediately guesses it's because they're still out of range. Me nods, convinced her attacks can't possibly hit their targets, and she can't fathom who'd charge into battle that fast. But right then, Satsuki barrels forward, snapping at her friends to watch her attack closely. But the guys cut her off in a heartbeat. They tell her this wall is probably just a trick, illusion magic, the kind that can make anything look real. The girl's eyes narrow as she wonders what Alice is hiding behind it. Will knows the mana drain is brutal, but he has to fire it off right here. William leans in and whispers to Cyrilla, asking if she can grab some time, and Cyrilla blurts out to Alice, "Are you really okay with something this horrible?" Alice smirks, calling it stupid, and in her mind, that's exactly why the boys can't see how important and magnificent this research really is. Meanwhile, the magic eye rockets toward the wall. Alice leans in and proudly asks what the girl would do next, because she's a mage who got kicked out of the Institute of Witchcraft, left with nothing but one path, becoming an adventurer, and she admits that to the world, she's just some little girl. As Alice kept needling the girl, she couldn't stop thinking, what's her problem? I mean, they weren't even that far apart in age, right? Mia suddenly realized this whole conversation was frying her brain, giving her a full-on headache. Alice says she's finally going to pull off the one stunt nobody from the Institute has ever dared. Then, right as she's speaking, a magical eye rips through the wall and William's breath catches. A nightmare scene: zombies packed in a crowd, all gripping bows. Alice shoves the magic wall aside and vows she'll show it to the world. Then behind her, a whole army of zombies rises up. William tells her there are around 20 zombies armed with long bows, and the girl's jaw drops in pure shock. She blurts out, "Zombies can use bows too. Like, they can't possibly pull off something that complicated." The boys figure it's gotta be Alice's research at work, and Me shoots back. Once they team up with longbows, they'll finally be able to reach them. Satsuki demands to know why that woman isn't attacking them. Then the girl blurts it out. She's holding back so the boys can't slip away, because the closer they get, the deadlier the zombies' attacks become. Satsuki leans in, serious as stone, and asks the guys what they're doing next, while William steps up to lay out the plan, and the girl can't believe he already had it all figured out. Alice snapped at the guys to wrap it up already, because she was dying to dive back into her research. William tells her he'll beef up the girl's protection against magic and counter magic, just in case, while Alice watches the boys finally lock in and make up their minds. Will said he was fully depending on Satsuki. That girl's overflowing with pure excitement. because Will knows that if they can pull off this trick on Alice, victory is theirs, but right now, Alice is already gearing up to strike. Alice Flamelia was born into a powerful family, raised with love, so sweet and bright that her parents cherished her every day, and people swore she wasn't human at all, calling her an angel for how stunning she looked. A man leans in to tell his wife that whatever their daughter wears flies off the shelves, because the girl isn't really being treated like a person anymore, she's just a doll, a walking ad for the family. One day she leans into her parents with a toy clutched tight, pouting with sadness as she asks, "Will you guys leave again because of your work?" The girl's smile faded fast, she suddenly feared being alone. Then her mother leaned in close and asked forgiveness for not catching on sooner, even though the girl was already clinging to hope, thinking her parents would stay home. The mom figured the girl just wanted a pet and told her she could ask anyone, so now Alice has a tiny puppy. He was bouncing with pure joy in the girl's arms, so gorgeous he looked straight up like an angel, and Alice realizes the traits she sees in her pet match parts of herself too. When loneliness hit, she didn't just reach out, she cradled him, played with him, bathed him, and curled up with him through the night. Suddenly, the pet's life ended, and Alice's world shattered. Her mom tried to comfort her by saying she'd get her replacement, swearing that if they searched hard enough they'd find the exact same one, but Alice didn't want to hear any of that. For days, the girl stayed trapped in her room, and even her parents couldn't reach her. They pleaded for her to come out. Tears blurred her vision as she heard a voice behind the door hunting for replacement model, and Alice remembered the way she patted her hand, trembling. After a while, she's already clawing into the ground where her pet vanished, because she's dead sure nothing can ever truly be replaced, and right now, she's staring at her pet's bones. She cracked open a book and learned how to craft golems, then dragged every bone together into one single, grim pile. Her parents lit up at their daughter's love for magic, sure. They believed Alice could become a real wizard the moment she graduated from the Institute of Witchcraft, and deep down, little Alice felt it too. Her dream was finally within reach. Now the girl is enrolled at the Institute of Witchcraft, and she can't forget what the teacher warned her. Any magic tied to the undead is off limits. Alice gets it. The undead, forbidden. If she can pull off what nobody else ever could, then there's no way they'll need to swap anyone out. She finally gets it. Her perfect world is powered by the undead. When she's off the clock, she hauls remains back home, then tries to bring them back to life, and her parents are left absolutely stunned. After they slipped back into their daughter's room once again, Alice kicked into work mode and started wondering what outfit she should grab this time. Alice caught her parents whispering, and her mom sank into despair. No matter how she begged, Alice wouldn't quit, while her dad shot back, "Just give her money, then the servants can stash it out of sight." Meanwhile, Alice is losing her mind. She'll do anything to fuel her research, because she needs more remains to gather the data she's chasing. She's desperate for more human remains, and she'll grab whatever she can get her hands on. Alice charmed men with her enchantment, then grabbed the materials she needed to fuel her research. Alice is locked in. She swears she'll pour everything she's got into this. The second her parents caught her snagging materials, they went totally wide-eyed in shock, and then, smiling like nothing happened, she asked them what outfit she should wear for the ad. Father leans in and tells him the other servants are keeping their mouths shut, but the man doesn't care how. Only one thing matters. The exhibits have to disappear, no matter what it costs, even as Father can't wrap his head around why it all had to end like this. Alice realizes the truth. Her parents are at the breaking point, and she might have to hunt down a whole new sponsor herself. The girl scans the employer lists, and then, boom, she spots Count Goldart, the absolute king of charm. Alice pours out her gratitude to the adventurers for helping her crack her research wide open, and William lanes in, telling the boys to go for it, because in ordinary situations, they'd be the ones falling behind. Alice thrusts her staff up and unleashes Dispel, and right away every one of her research subjects snaps their bows into place. Alice just knows the adventurers are done for. The boys huddled close, terrified of the undead using bows, so they had only one move: cut off the path. Then an arrow thudded in and a huge shield slammed into place, saving them from every attack, and Alice's eyes went wide in shock. Satsuki snaps to it the second he's told. Alice stared, stunned, because projectile deflection is intermediate magic, and there's no way a beginner mage should pull that off. Will looked smug and thought their plan had worked. Then Alice snapped around and told the guys to get ready for the next volley. For someone like Alice, who's laser-focused on her own research, it's brutal to craft a steady, calm next move, because while she's buried in answers, these adventurers fight like it's their everyday life. Suddenly, Alice's pet yanked her by the hem like it had a mission, and before she could even bark an order, she threw her robe up and shielded herself from Satsuki's strike. Then the pet darted off on its own, and they finally realized it had acted all by itself. Alice is seething. She whirls on Will and snaps how he dared to lie to her. A mage who can projectile deflect can't possibly fire just one magic arrow. Will realizes their plan didn't land the way they hoped, so they have no choice, fight head-on, face-to-face. Alice spots Satsuki blazing through the air and swinging her sword toward her, and the woman snaps up a force field to block the hit, only for it to start splitting right away, leaving her staring, stunned at the strange power breaking through. Satsuki knows that magic and that gut punch feeling. She sees the fear in Alice's eyes, watches the woman slam the force field back into place, and then bark out the command to get ready for the next volley. Alice never even clocked it as that girl sprinted in behind her, setting up a surprise strike. Mia sprinted forward and unleashed her weapon, cracking the force field to pieces, then Alice lunged to hit the switch again. Right here the girl chanted a spell meant to bury the undead for good. And Alice's whole army seemed to vanish into thin air, and the woman's face twisted with horror. She realized it all happened from one spell, which meant the girl was about to end this, so she had to bolt out of here right now. Alice snaps her focus to Will. He unleashes magic arrows at the woman, but she laughs, because if he keeps firing the same magic, she's the one who's going to come out on top. Alice's eyes widened. Only 3 arrows had come flying out, and that shocked her. She can't wrap her head around how a mid-level mage could pull this off, then she starts doubting, maybe that guy isn't even just a mage at all. Alice's gut says he's a wizard. Will realizes Alice can fire 3 arrows at once, and the enemy's got barely any mana left to fight back. He reckons that before Alice even gets to cast a single spell, the staff better do their job, because Mia and Cirilla are already launching their assault. He knows it for sure because he saw the bride trapped right inside the church. The moment she looked, her horror and crushing despair hit you like a punch. And trust me, it all comes down to one name, Alice Flamelia. The girls swarmed the woman instantly, smashing through her power barriers, and the guy shot a desperate look like, I just need a little more time and a lot more strength. He can't afford to lose, period. Then out of nowhere, something drops and slams onto the floor with a brutal clang. Alice is like, what do I do right now? Because some wizard and his crew, people she doesn't even know, keep landing attacks on her, and she realizes she has to escape this place fast, no matter what, and she's determined to fire up that force field skill again. Turns out, something smashes into her out of nowhere. Suddenly Alice snaps into it. This is the 4th arrow. Satsuki rips apart the power barrier again, like it's nothing at all. Alice refuses to end her life in a place like this. She won't let that happen. She knows she can't stop the girl, not now. She poured herself into studying the undead and paid the price, everything she had, because it mattered for the world. Still, Alice can't help wondering, if the undead vanish, what's going to be left of her? Alice finally gets it. This is a power only asterisk she can unlock. So then tell me, why was Alice even born, and why did she live at all? The moment that question lands, the woman's eyes dim fast, and Satsuki drives her sword straight through her chest. The woman crumpled to the floor, her hands spasming with every breath, trapped in a world of undead that felt like her whole universe, because she refused to be someone's replacement. She wanted to be the only one. Eileen beams at the boys, thrilled to see them all standing strong and perfectly healthy. Cirilla thrusts a book into Eileen's hands and demands she take a look. Turns out that book was packed with every record of Alice's whole career, and Cirilla admits it herself. They read it carelessly because every one of the boys dug into it. They struck sparks, stacked kindling, and hauled in firewood as Eileen's mind raced back to that wizard her parents kicked out, now trapped under his father's cold control. Ciri leaned in and asked who she meant, and Eileen said she was talking about Will, whose father shuts down his dream to become an adventurer. Cirilla realizes Will's father, head of the court magicians, would absolutely hate this, and right then Eileen blurts out that she wants to ask Cirilla for a favor. Meanwhile, Will and Mia were already huddled by the fire, soaking up the warmth like it was their lifeline. Cirilla strides up and blurts that she's been thinking about something. Then the girl notices the guy scorching documents about the undead right in front of them. Will nods and says none of that research matters, it shouldn't exist at all. The girl lowers her gaze to the fire, then humbly offers to help, lifting one of the books into her hands. Suddenly Cirilla's mind snaps back. There's another undead still out there, and they never got cleansed. Will insists it's not her fault. This creature was brought back thanks to Gollum's magic. But before the guy can finish, the girl cuts him off and snaps that he should wait, because that's not why she came here to talk. She couldn't stand to leave it there, so she rushed it to Alice's body, but the moment she tried, it crumbled to dust in her hands, and that's when the girl starts to wonder, what even is justice, really? The maid handed Satsuki a chunk of wood for the fireplace, and the girls instantly leaned in, because they couldn't stop wondering what Cirilla and Will were really talking about. Cirilla shut her eyes tight and begged the guy to spill everything, because that hurt on his face wouldn't let her ignore him. He refused straight up, claiming that's just how he looks and it has nothing to do with what he feels inside. Then Cyrilla snapped in anger, telling him to read the room because she meant he could count on them. The flames mercilessly ripped through every last one of Alice's records, leaving nothing standing. Will says he's been chewing on a few things, and suddenly he can't stop wondering what his father would do, so he grabs another page and tosses it right into the fire. He explains that he was the one who told them to burn everything down, and now he's terrified he might have done the wrong thing, wondering if it's really making the girl stare at her idea of justice and question it. Sorella flicks her gaze away, then nods and agrees with him. She nods along and agrees, burn the research, no regrets, and she joins him, sealing the deal as they both figure out that now they've truly done it together. Satsuki snatched up a few papers and blurted that she wanted in with the boys now. She's done with victims like Philia, and Mia immediately agrees. No overthinking for her, she'd rather just do something simple like this. Satsuki fires a question at the boys, can they switch what they do and become her accomplices? Mizuha scoffs and says she doesn't buy that it's even a real profession. Will says he wants to stay an adventurer. Cyrilla begs him to catch that same atmosphere again. Mia freaks out at his reaction, and the guy quickly throws out an apology. Eileen strides up to the boys and fires back the exact question they've been asking. What about his father? She begs, can I borrow some paper too? And the guy shoots back, with that the curtain drops on my latest adventures. Now the action explodes in the Adventurers Guild in Altera City, where everything starts with an E rank. Eileen waved the boys over, told them to take care, and they nodded hard, then waved her goodbye. Cyrilla rushes up to Eileen and asks if it's really okay, because she's convinced Eileen would make an amazing mentor for William. Eileen refuses because she thinks she's not good enough, and she knows there are things people just can't say when they're too close. Cyrilla snagged the girl's attention by faking a cough. She's convinced this will light a path to real progress in Eileen's love. Then she bursts out, screaming that she has no clue what Cyrilla is even talking about. The boy beams now that he's finally landed an E rank, and Satsuki clocks the grin on his face instantly. Shame burns in the girl's chest. She knows Cyrilla nailed everything. She shoots a thumbs up and mutters that it was way too obvious, while Eileen throws her hands over her face like she can't believe it. She can't stop wondering if Will had to pick between her and his wild dream of becoming an adventurer, and of course he'd pick the adventure, and Mia is not happy about this talk one bit. Eileen won't quit her life as a knight, so she flat out refuses to go with them. Eileen grins and tells him, if I end up a girl who falls head over heels for someone blindly, then this whole mess gets way easier. The boy nods and agrees, because deep down he knows it was Eileen who kicked off his very first adventure. Eileen's heart practically burst. She never expected the guy to remember every single one of their adventures. At that exact moment, Satsuki snapped and started to lose control, but Eileen shot in fast and cut it off before things went too far. Eileen told the girl to step it up and carry herself with real elegance. Eileen flashes the boys a wave and tells them, I've gotta go right now. Satsuki snapped again, swearing that next time she'd absolutely win, and Eileen just stared at her, urging her to go for it. Cyrilla swears they're chatting about practice, and she's sure Satsuki hits it every single morning. Suddenly, Satsuki's rage ignites. She snaps that she can't stand feeling weaker than the princess, then she rockets to the side, ordering the boys not to go looking for her. Now the boys finally got the whole picture, so Cyrilla pushed them to find a job Satsuki could actually enjoy, and the only thing that popped into their heads was hunting down and exterminating orcs. Satsuki practically glowed with excitement over the task. Then just minutes later, she stared at the defeated orc with a heavy, sad look, and Mia swooped in to confirm the victory. Satsuki leans in and asks Cyrilla if this kind of thing has ever happened before, and Cyrilla points out that the orc got struck in the vital spots, meaning someone reached this place ahead of them. Will realizes they're running a well-rehearsed attack, maybe even using sleep, and Mia clocks it instantly. The orcs were just defeated, so this can't have been long ago. The girl can't hear a thing or feel a soul. Cyrilla throws the magic eye back into the conversation again, because the boys can't afford to assume that their enemy's enemy is suddenly on their side. While he's stuck watching those girls, the guy glances at his staff and decides it's better to play it safe than risk getting burned. Before anything escalated in the forest, a girl launched herself right into the center of an open clearing, then told her leader the coast was clear, no signs of orcs anywhere. She thinks they'll finally catch a breather for a bit, but the men don't buy it. No way they're letting their guard down this soon, and the man even snaps at Lafania for refusing to relax just because they've gotten used to peace and quiet. The girl slammed her foot down and declared, everything's fine if I've still got legs. Then she leaned forward asking where Kalpos had gone. Right then the man snapped his finger straight at the guy perched on a tall tree branch. Kaufus shook like a leaf and clung to the tree trunk, terrified of the orcs. The girl started saying Kalthos had the skills and talent to be picked as a fighter, so he should lift his chin and climb down from that tree. Suddenly, a pair chatting at work got called out for not flirting, and the girls snapped back that they should just go find a boyfriend. Lafanya begged them not to worry, because she's sure that this dreamy prince on a white horse is about to find her any minute. The man pressed Lafania, asking if she was really serious about all this, and the guys shot back, wondering if a white horse was truly worth that much for a leader. Then Lafania snapped, told them to knock it off, and even she could admit she was starting to blur the line between fantasy and reality. She asks can it just be a handsome prince on a white horse, and insists that if she ever gets herself into trouble, he'll ride in and rescue her, while the elves beam because their leader's imagination is blooming. The elves spotted the guard, and Kalthos' fear hit him the instant he laid eyes on the orc. Yeah, even the girl nodded along, saying the deadliest thing about orcs is their brutal, towering physical strength. With the elves' speed and magic, wiping out the orcs was almost effortless. Then the leader thrust her hand forward and said it was only a giant slab of fat, before commanding every elf to get ready to put them to sleep. The orc dropped dead to the world the second his eyes met the dark. The elves closed in fast, raising their swords right in front of him, certain as ever that those orcs never stand a chance against elven warriors. Suddenly the monsters snapped awake after taking those attacks, and the leader couldn't believe it. The elves had smashed his vital organs, yet he still woke up. He snatched his weapon, but his body betrayed him. He couldn't move a single inch before dropping lifeless onto the ground. The elves clocked just how brutally stubborn those orcs were. The leader certainly hadn't seen that coming, yet he still fired up the team, telling them they could push through and do it all anyway. The boys peek around the corner and spot a whole pack of orcs closing in. The fight between them flared back up, and the elves snapped, because the monsters weren't just falling over, they were resisting hard. Then the elves tore through the orcs with attack after brutal attack. Even Kalthos got shoved into the fight, had no choice but to go in swinging. Lifania loosed a magic arrow and drilled the orc standing right beside Kalpos, only to find the battlefield crawling with monsters, swarming them so thick it was almost impossible to fight back. The elf gasped that her sword was gone, and right behind her, a massive orc was already looming. She barely had time to stare at him with pure terror. And then bam, one of the elves swapped her own body for her friend in a heartbeat. The orc didn't waste a second. He swung and clocked the elf dead center, dropping her instantly, and the whole tribe of elves went into terrified shock. Lafania shot forward at once, swinging her weapons toward the orc like she was ready to strike. In that tiny cave, the elves can't even stretch their power, so the guys shout for Lafania to pull back, only for the girl to cut in, dead serious. Don't joke with me. Lafania whirls around, tears of horror and hurt blazing in her eyes. She's not leaving until every last orc drops, and the guy warns them. If they don't watch their step, this is going to end badly. Then the leader snapped and reminded the elves they weren't just refugees anymore. They were warriors, and if they backed away, their brother's death would turn pointless. With a hard order, he drove the mission forward. The operation would continue, and the boys had to go. Suddenly, click, click, something in the air grabs their attention, and sure enough, the orcs are charging in again. But the ground under their feet turned rotten in an instant. Then one of the elves dropped straight into a yawning abyss, and that only confirmed it. A trap was waiting for them. Meanwhile, the boys headed straight for the cave, and Satsuki snapped that she was bored out of her mind, asking why she couldn't just go forward with them. Cyrilla tells her there's a real chance some top-tier orcs can throw magic, and Satsuki's mind immediately snaps back to the goblins. Satsuki confessed that these massacres crawl back into her dreams night after night. He suddenly looks down and sees orc bodies piled right in front of them, and this time it doesn't look like a battle gone wrong, it looks like an all-out fight. Will spots another corpse beside the orc, and even without a head, it just might be an elf. Cirillo can't believe they actually found one, so Will shouts at the boys to push forward. Cyrilla figured the blow hit square on the head with a club, and Will's stomach sank. He had no clue if those guys would make it in time. The girls kicked into a run, and they decided that Will would spill the whole truth as they raced. He nods and agrees, then they explain it plain. A whole bunch of elves are trapped, surrounded by orcs. One got baited into a trap and ended up wrecked, brutally hurt, and there's also an orc hanging around who looks just like the leader. Once more in the war between elves and orcs, Rado's friend gets hit by a magical arrow, and the leader just stares in horror, because he realizes there's no dodging what's already been loosed. He panicked again and bolted from them like his life depended on it. Then the leader stares the orc leader down, grim and locked in, and asks himself, what about her legs? Because if those legs are fast enough, she's going to reach the orc first. She charges straight ahead anyway, determined to smash that orc to pieces. Then the girl gets hit by weakening forces, and two orc silhouettes start slipping away from her. She slams onto the ground with a heavy thud and can barely lift a single inch of her body. She realizes the orc is high-ranking too. His movements are way too sharp to be some nobody, so the monster glares at her with a sour, sullen look beneath the new models. The leader stared at the mess and fought for a plan, because Rado couldn't go toe-to-toe with those wounds, and Kalthos was only able to slip away from these blows. The leader realizes she can't beat them. There's no way to stop the magic arrow, and with dread in her chest, she keeps asking why everything spiraled into this. She wishes they'd retreated way earlier, but rage burned in her eyes, because she truly thought they could crush the orcs, especially since they took out the first guard so effortlessly, and Lafania treated the whole thing like it'd be a cakewalk. Suddenly the orcs started glowing and shot up into the air, struck by a bolt of lightning. Then the orc leader's staff clattered to the ground with a brutal clang. Turns out Will showed up almost on time. He smashed the orc leader with a brutal attack, and the elf leader gasped, stunned that anyone had come to their rescue. Sarilla lined in and told Satsuki she'd handle the orcs lurking right behind her. The elf stared in shock as people and a cat-looking girl marched right up to them. Then the orcs snapped back into fury and started swinging their clubs again. Satsuki snapped back from the impact and rocketed straight at the monster. Will swung his staff and snapped an enchantment onto Satsuki's weapon, turning her attacks lightning fast in an instant. She lunged with her attack and smacked the wall right beside Kalpos by accident. Terror hit him so hard he crumpled straight onto the floor. Satsuki asks the guy if he's okay, and the elf shoots back, apologizing like he's done something terrible. Only Satsuki doesn't get it at all, because a massive orc is right behind her, raising his weapon like he's about to smash her in half. In the blink of an eye, the girl struck him down. Right then, Cirilla and I went after another orc, and we surged in with flawless teamwork, cutting him down and ending him fast. After Sarilla and I finished our part, we called Satsuki in to seal the deal and finish it. Rado suddenly blurts out, "Who are you?" And Cirilla only asks him to shut up for a second because she's about to unleash a healing miracle on him. The elven leader snapped her gaze downward, frozen in horror, realizing just how effortlessly they'd crushed the orcs. Me tied the rope to the rock, and Satsuki, rope in hand, leaped straight into the trap to rescue the elves. The leader finally sees the boys showed up just when they needed help most, and Will rushes to Lafania, asking if she's okay. The girl locks onto her perfect vision, because this is the dream she's always wanted. The leader grabs his gratitude, then tells him straight up, her comrades probably need help right now. Cirilla tells them there are tons of wounded here and she'll need time, then she rushes to tend to them before heading over there. Will listens, understands it all, and pleads with the leader not to push himself. Lafania blurts, "So who are you guys?" Will grins and says, "We're adventurers, mission's simple, we came to wipe out the orcs." The leader told them they were warriors from an elven village just up the way, and then her face hardened, because that's where orcs tore into her village on the lower back. Cirilla and Satsuki finally yanked the elf free from the trap. Then, out of nowhere, the very elf Cirilla was healing started sobbing like her heart was breaking, and the leader realized with a jolt that Cirilla might not be as good as she thought. She's convinced she should have been turned into a toy for the orcs, because that would have been a fitting punishment, and the guy's mind spirals to the curtains that trap women of other races just to use them for reproduction. Will remembers the orcs are fixated on elven girls, but even so, he never told the girls. He just didn't know what to do. He paused for a beat, then, after a couple of long minutes, snapped his cape off his shoulders. As he started undressing, Will begged the leader for forgiveness right then and there. Will yanked Lafania closer and told her it might be that the girl wouldn't like it. Right when Fania stopped being able to see, Will snapped that the girl was hurting herself and told her to calm down before it got worse. He yanked his jacket up and wrapped it around her head. Will says his mom used to do this when the boy couldn't calm down. It actually worked, and now he figures he can just take off his jacket if she doesn't like it. The girl nods along with Will, and then the leader strides up, jacket over his head, begging his crew to forgive her for acting too rashly, and just like that, she's calm. Will shrugs it off, saying it's fine, anyone can snap when the pressure hits. Satsuki, me, and Cirilla are completely lost, like, wait, what's happening? The leader ripped the jacket off her face, wrapped it around her comrade, and right then the elf in the jacket burst into tears. Then slowly, she steadied herself and calmed down. The boys stare at the elves with worried eyes, and the leader insists he wants to thank them again for saving everyone. Then Will look straight at the girl, and she instantly buries her face in embarrassment. She jerked her head around at once, lost for words, trying to figure out how she could ever thank them. Then Will shut that thought down fast, because gratitude wasn't on the menu. They'd found him completely by accident. The boys are about to get rewarded for wiping out the orcs. Lafania won't let that happen. Then she blurts out, "You guys can chill in the elf village if you want." When the elves finally recalled the leader's prophecy about a prince in white riding into danger, it all clicked for them. Sarilla and Mia understood it too. The elves nodded in agreement, and it all clicked for them, because there was no way they'd let anyone think they hadn't paid their debts, exactly what the leader had been trying to say. Satsuki blurts out that she's never once seen an elven village, and Sarilla can't stop getting intrigued, while Mia's already pushing for payback and itching to see it for herself. Will nods, snaps up the leader's offer, and agrees on the spot. With a radiant smile, she promised that the whole village would welcome the rescuers with open arms. The boys burst into the elven village, and Satsuki's jaw dropped when she saw the elven houses perched in the trees, while I, sharp as ever, caught the elves' curious stares as they watched us arrive. An elf steps up to Kalpose and begs for forgiveness, because Kalpose has no choice, he's got to deliver that report. Once he got there okay, the man sprang up onto the branch and shot higher, tree after tree, and Satsuki couldn't believe how insanely agile those elves really were. The girl clocked it instantly. Those elves didn't throw out aura at all, and me told her the real reason. Her legs were just insanely strong. The leader snaps that their movement isn't just style, it's training as warriors, learning to make their legs spring off the ground like they're built to explode. Elves are naturally light as air, so they slice through high-speed fights way better, and Satsuki just can't wrap her head around it. She doesn't understand any of it, not a bit, yet she still begs the elf leader to train her. Lafania caught the spark, then urged Satsuki to teach her more swordsmanship, because the way Satsuki fought made even the leader's legs tremble. Honestly, the girl thought it was a pretty great idea. Will tells Lafania to step aside for a second. He's got something he needs to say to her now that she's finally calmed down. Sarilla can't quite make sense of Will and Lafania's closeness because her mind keeps snapping back to Lady Eileen, and Mia gets it, since those first sparks of love don't show up often. Will remembers Lafania's warning about becoming an orc toy, and the moment it clicks, the guy is appalled. The girl was crushed with regret. Will praised the leader's hard responsibility, then begged her not to keep paying for it with needless sacrifices. Lafania clocked how genuinely kind the guy was. Sarilla couldn't stop smiling at it, and Mia caught that Will could practically read the mood in the air. Will leans in and tells Lafania, "If you want to be responsible, don't let old regrets drag you down, use them to grow." Sarilla and Mia both nod hard, and Will adds that she should look ahead, reflect, and get better from here on out. Will keeps pushing Lafania to dig deep and figure out exactly how this disastrous mistake happened, because Sarilla and Mia never saw that kind of answer coming. Will says he has to do this so they don't repeat the same blunders later, and Lafania gets every word and nods along with him. Right then, Sarilla snatches the guy by his hood and snaps at him to shut up, while Mia pats the leader on the shoulder like, "Yeah, you got this." Suddenly, Mia snapped to attention. She'd spotted something in the forest, and Will caught it right away, asking what was going on. Mia said she'd heard footsteps moving in a specific direction. Will's barrier didn't block a single thing, no warmth, no resistance, nothing, and while everyone else already hauled themselves up to Will and Mia, Mia snapped her focus on the noises, then blurted that maybe those sounds were elf footsteps. Lafania told Sarilla that the orc attacks clamps down so hard that almost no elves managed to leave the village. Then the leader leaned in and revealed that several other elven villages are sitting close by. Sarilla reveals that the biggest village is under her mother's control. Out of nowhere, Lafania snaps her gaze away. Blood-red droplets stream down the injured body's legs and splatter onto the ground. Will lowered the body onto the ground and shouted for Sarilla. Then the truth hit hard. The victim was Lafania's mother. She looked absolutely wrecked, and it felt like another disaster was coming for Lafania. With a shaky push of her willpower, Lafania's mother cracked her eyes open and breathed out, I finally made it. I'm in the elven village." Will tells Lafania Sarilla helps first, she's a priest. Then he presses, does she have relatives around here? But the elf woman can't say for sure. Sarilla gets a light treatment, and Lafania hovers behind her, totally stuck on how to approach her own mother. Lafania whispers her mother's name like she's afraid of the world, and the moment her mom answers, weakness hits hard. She can't even lift herself from the bed. Sarilla snaps to the truth. One round of light just won't cut it, so she's gearing up to get the treatment again, and when she apologizes for the trouble, Lafania wastes no time asking what happened to her mother. Mother snaps that a pack of orcs stormed off to hit their main village. Satsuki was about to spring into battle when the elf woman cut in right away, pointing out how big their squad really was. The woman claims their leader is the emperor of the orcs, the highest rank there is, and says these orcs are well over 100, maybe more. Satsuki wasn't prepared to stomach a number that huge, so the boys all piled into the elf house and started hashing out the whole situation. The elves of Lafania village marched up to her mother, Fanola, and demanded, "Shouldn't there be at least 4 times as many elves here as in our village?" Because their whole main village already had over 400 elves. The men figure Fanola must be the toughest elven warrior around, and will suddenly realizes they could join in as mercenaries if someone would just let them, because in her, he spots this jaw-dropping hunger to prove herself. Satsuki whips around and challenges the boy. Couldn't he just blast the whole 100 with a fireball or lightning and make them all explode? He realizes if they want to sell themselves as real mercenaries, they can't act like wallflowers, so he decides the best move is to back up his honest opinion and go for it. He knows it all comes down to how the orcs move, but since they're backed and led by the emperor, this won't be a walk in the park. Suddenly, Lafania rocketed upward. She grilled the boy, asking if he could fend for himself depending on the enemy, and Cyrilla snapped that if William hadn't pulled his punches, he would have handled it, and the moment she said that, I instantly relived the fight with the undead. That's when he finally started breaking it down for Fanola, how the orc squads get formed, and exactly who falls under the emperor's command. Cyrilla suddenly realized that the guy had just brushed it off like it was nothing. Will says the orc lord matches Satsuki in raw power, which means the orc emperor has to be just as strong as Eileen, Rilla, and I didn't think we'd be hearing about a monster like that. Cyrilla can't believe it. Will keeps insisting the orcs' magic and life force are insanely strong, and even with his own spell, he's not sure he can knock him out with a single blow. In the end, it was just the mage and the chieftain left in that cave. Will swore lightning was a spell that cut straight through, but after he took them down, he still didn't land it exactly right. The girls sagged with defeat, and Cyrilla folded her hands in her lap like she already knew the outcome. She realized there was no way they could win. Then she pressed the question, "Do you really mean we don't have an elven army in the village?" What? Fanola says the nearby villages are packed with warriors, but the main village only has around 23 elves, and even if they dragged every elf from those surrounding places, they'd top out at just 100. The elves will beg for more help, but the captured ones will likely be finished for good after that brutal run-in with the orcs. Will leans in and asks Fanola straight up how much she's willing to shell out to hire them as mercenaries. Satsuki wants to shut it down, but the guy cuts in so fast with an explanation. Will tells them to stop chasing everyone else's spotlight and start thinking about their own lives. If Satsuki's ready to gamble with her life for the elves' safety, then she's got no shot at surviving this world for long. Will offers to bargain with the elves, making sure they're told exactly when he'll finally get to step out. Satsuki bristled with fury. Now she's leaving everything to the guy, and Cyrilla can't stay calm either, so she and I both handed it all over to him. Will demands a daily payment of 20 gold coins, and he'll tack on another 200 gold once the job is finally done. Will tells the boys if we sense any threat that could get us killed, we're backing out, no questions. And yeah, even then, they still demand their pay for every day they show up. If the elves agree to these terms, then the guys won't fight cooperation. Fanola whips around to her daughter and asks what she's really got, and the girl snaps back that she can vouch for her skills. Fanola pushes herself up from the ground and snaps back, agreeing to the guy's terms. Everyone burst into the elves' main village, the evacuation site, and right there an elf stepped out, latched onto the group, and warmly greeted Fanola. He's blown away. Her daughter and a bunch of people are marching right beside her. She tells him she'll explain everything later and shoves him to go inside. Fanola and Lafania shove the boys through the passage, and we send our eyes everywhere. We're surveying the whole area. Will suddenly realizes he can tap into the cave's structure like a secret blueprint. They pushed into the room where elves lay sprawled on the canvas, ready to evacuate. Fanola explains the truth. Most of them had already been crushed in battle and fled for their lives. The boy asks if the elves can ever come together again, and the woman crushes the hope. No chance at all. She only prays they've found shelter in the nearby villages. Will leans in and asks Fanola if there's another way into the cave, besides the one they just crawled through, but she shuts him down cold and refuses. He insists that if this is truly the situation, then this is off the charts dangerous. If the orcs smash them with numbers, it's game over. These guys are way too exposed to survive a single hit, and they can get smoked out in the chaos. Fanola's face hardens with pure seriousness. She turns away from him and starts replaying every word they said. The elf tells me they stumbled on this cave by pure accident, just trying to duck out of the rain, and it's miles from the main village, way off in the distance, big enough to keep them safe for a while. Cyrilla fires a question at Oni. Can you put yourself in their shoes? The elves didn't have a choice. They fled for their lives and stumbled into this place by accident after all. Then Mia brings up the real point. The way people treat elves, and how the elves here might be way older than Will. Will keeps firing off strategy warnings, saying that standing in that position is pure battlefield death, and at the same time Cirilla grabs the moment and yells at him to snap back, reminding him she's the one who cares for his spirit. Finola let out a laugh. Yeah, it stung admitting it, but the guy was right and she knew she'd have to rethink her position. Meanwhile, Lafania beamed, thrilled that her mom had made that choice. Loads of elves were sprawled out resting, while others rushed around, bandaging the wounded like it was non-stop chaos. Finola blurts that these are the only elves she can round up, about 100 of them, and Cirilla is already sprinting ahead, determined to heal every single one. The elves are beyond grateful to the boys, because they're still reeling that their wounds shut up so fast, and the girl can't help wondering if the elves truly have no healers or priests at all. The locals shrug and say, "We're elves, so we don't cling to any faith," like there isn't even a hint of religion to share. Suddenly an elf bolts into the cave, yelling that the orcs are coming straight for them, yet the woman refuses to believe a word of it. The man says there are around 13 orcs, basically a whole squad's worth, and that means at least one of them must be higher ranked to keep everything balanced. You want more elves, sure, but they can't even breathe easy. They can't start a full-on war yet. Then wait, something's wrong off to the side. The guy turns to Finola and begs her to let him and Satsuki go first. Finola clocks that he's cooking up something big, nods to his plan, and immediately snaps out orders, telling the others to get ready. We'll blare Satsuki into action, and she's ready, fully, no doubts. We'll shove Satsuki into the hallway to buy time against the orcs. Then, once Will gave the signal, she had to duck. Satsuki isn't used to battling inside a claustrophobic cave like this, so it hits different. Still, the fight is going one-on-one, and right now Will's locked in with that see-through gaze. He spots a brutal squad of orcs, marched into battle under the command of a ruthless general. Satsuki blurts, "Give it to me," and right as she does, an orc lunges into view from around the corner. A couple more peek back over his shoulder, then grin and shoot the boys a wave from behind them. Satsuki realizes the monsters aren't just watching, they're sizing her up as prey, and she refuses to be underestimated. She snaps at them to look again, then barrels forward, only to get steamrolled the instant the guy's magic arrows hit. Magic arrows tore through the air and struck monsters in a blink, boom, and the very first orc went down. Satsuki realizes she hasn't done a thing, then every other orc freaks out and bolts for their lives. The magic arrows slam into everyone who still hasn't gotten away, and right there, Satsuki just shrugs. She doesn't think there's anything critical at all. Suddenly, the boys get thrown off by a thunderous noise, and they can't stop themselves from wondering what the heck caused it. Satsuki is dead set on payback. She's sure the enemy has to answer for her earache, because the guy realizes that all that furious roar is coming from the orc general, and he's already figured out it's aimed at the orcs who tried to slip away. At this point, the orcs barreled back into the fight, and Satsuki let out a breath of relief. Finally, those monsters were ready to throw down. The girl crushes monster after monster, one brutal win at a time. She slickly weaves her ball handling with brutal melee skills and wipes the monsters out. Suddenly he shot his hand toward her head, but she snapped back in time and slammed him down before he could finish. Satsuki realizes that sparring gets brutal fast when you've got nowhere to fall back to. Will is about to unleash the skill. He whips his staff around again and focuses with pure intent. Another orc barges in, and just like that, the guy walks away with Satsuki. Will he brace himself for battle and whip magical lightning around his body? Then we trigger the lightning strike, bam. Every single orc gets hit at once, like a deadly chain reaction ripped through the battlefield, and the monsters melt on the spot, unable to do a single thing. The general tore into the air with yet another gut-wrenching roar. Satsuki saw the orcs refuse to run even after the blow, and Will stepped in to explain why orc bodies and even regular folks can shrug it off as long as the attack lands in the right spot. In the end, only 4 orcs are still standing. Satsuki snaps, "Give them to me," and with a spring of speed, she leaps forward and wipes out the remaining orcs in 2 brutal counts. In the end, all that's left is the general, standing there, taking up the whole width of the road like nothing else matters. He explodes forward at the girl in a sudden rush, and he barely even makes contact with her. Satsuki throws down the challenge, smirking that the orc can't outrun her. Then the monster snaps with rage, frothing at the mouth like he's seconds away from unleashing his final attack. Right here the orc gets worse, way worse. Satsuki seizes the opening and slashes the monster down at once with her blade. The orc gets one eye torn away, and the moment it happens, he collapses hard onto the floor. Will realizes they've finally beaten the monsters. Satsuki lets out a shaky breath, then realizes that the high-ranking orc is lightning fast, and no matter how hard she pushes, there's no way she'll ever catch Eileen. Will hates where this is heading, so he rips off his cape, declares, "I'm Satsuki," then wraps the cape around her head and tells her, "Thanks for helping me." Will loves that Satsuki set the bar sky high, but he still tells her she can't keep driving herself that hard, because the bandaged girl just asks the voice question again. Will warns that it'd be a nightmare if she pushed too hard and lost her life, and even though Satsuki tried to protest, she swallowed her words and calmed down. A few seconds later, she shrieked, then she insisted she didn't care, even as she still thanked the guy and stormed off. Meanwhile, Finola lays it out for everyone. Will and Satsuki didn't just charge ahead for nothing. She's convinced they volunteered as the sacrifice so the elves could finally breathe, heal up, and recover. Finola can't help but burst with energy as she begs the elves, "Don't you dare let up. Keep going for the boys' memories." Mia sure the elves' expectations will get shattered any minute now, while Cirilla just shrugs, everything will stay the same, until Satsuki and will ride in to meet the girls. Cirilla stared at Satsuki's wrapped-up head and couldn't stop wondering what chaos had happened out on the battlefield while Satsuki was out there, because Lafania's worry said it all, and she couldn't help thinking, how much did Satsuki have to endure? Satsuki tells him it was way too easy. He snaps that she better not be lying. She insists nobody got hurt, then drops the real twist. All of it was done with magic. You get where she's coming from, but Cirilla can't shake the feeling that arrogance might make Satsuki slip, and it's like she just watched the whole battle right in front of her eyes, while me still can't figure out why that girl keeps her head covered. Finola demands to know what happened to the orcs, insisting they must have just retreated. Then Will snaps his head and says they were wiped out, every last one, and Finola fires back that there were no high-ranking orcs there, so Will explains it was a tiny strike team led by a general. Finola didn't even hesitate, she snapped to her task and rushed to verify. But before any of that, she demanded to know the right way. She's convinced they don't have to move the base yet, because those guys already have all the power they need right now. Will says it all went perfectly because they gave everything they had, then Satsuki cuts in, asking why the orcs aren't swarming in all at once. The boys finally clock it, over 100 orcs are loose, and they've spread out across other elven villages. Cirilla knows William has to lay it all out cleanly to Satsuki, or she won't get it at all. Will tells Satsuki to picture it. 3 brothers of hers are out herding sheep, and then they bolt, so the real question is, should they band together and go catch them? Satsuki figures that if things had gone that way, they'd have scattered right then. While the girl gets it, the orcs see them as sheep. And Cirilla hits the truth even harder, since the whole orc squad didn't come back. From now on the orcs will hunt them as wolves, not sheep. Will thinks, if I'm the leader, I'll drop a small platoon in my place. Then I'll send others back to report in a hurry if things turn ugly. The girl asks so how many are in a small platoon, and the guy replies 3 little squads together, about 30 to 50 orcs total. And yeah, the commander of this platoon is probably way higher than even that general, likely an orc lord, and that orc lord hits just as hard as Satsuki. That's the key. Once the emperor has this info, he can issue whatever orders he wants, and Satsuki knows for a fact the emperor has to be on Eileen's level. Finola gets it instantly, and she's already pushing them to move, now. A pitch-black night has swallowed the world, and a crew of elves and the boys are charging through the dark forest. Finola leads the way, and they stride in tight, perfect formation behind her. Will realizes that if the orcs strike right here, they're in for the fight of their lives. Will kept his guard up, but his nerves wouldn't let up, and the whole situation felt wrong. He told Vanola to take a break for a while, because the kid just had to go take a walk in the sky, and then he vanished. Lafania tells her mother that William can go water the flowers, then casually explains that humans eat and drink way more than elves, only for Finale to catch it and mutter that it sounded a little rude. Will neatly folded his clothes under the leaves, then stood there completely naked in the middle of the forest, using night vision to stalk the darkness. Suddenly the dark trees snapped into view, blazing so bright you'd swear it was daytime, and the guy's like, whoa, what just happened? Right here he cast the metamorphosis spell, and boom, the guy instantly ripped into the sky as a bird. Will shoots up into the sky, realizing he hasn't flown like this in ages. From up high it's crystal clear, no orcs are anywhere in sight. Then he spots a flicker of light out there, and his gut tells him it must be the elven village that just got attacked. He reads that and instantly goes, yeah, that's definitely worth checking out. He shot through the sky, stunned by the thought of who could have taken a whole village. Then terror hit as he saw it. Buildings torn apart and orcs sprawled by a tree trunk, gulping down the leftover remains of the villagers. Girls sat right nearby, trembling with pure terror, like their lives were seconds from ending. Will tells himself to breathe and shut it down, because he can't go charging off on his own. He spots an orc on the hill, bigger than the rest, towering like a nightmare. Turns out it wasn't just some enemy, it was the orc emperor himself. Will locks eyes with him and realizes the orc has somehow clocked his presence. Eileen and her team storm into the cave, and the moment she steps inside, she remembers last time, when orcs tore the place apart, and now she's stuck wondering what's waiting for them on the third trip. He shrugs and says there's nothing anyone can do, those orders come straight from the king. The girl lets out a long breath and mutters that this should just be normal. Eileen tells the boys this will be great practice, pats the shoulder of her kid, and fires up Harry with, "Someday you'll graduate and become a knight," and the boy nods, ready to believe. Eileen doesn't even feel a single orc circling the boys. The boys are out in a field when Eileen leans in and asks if the old man has finally spotted the massive army of orcs. The man swore that a bunch of elves were there too, and he'd spotted them clearly, the same way he did with his old eyes, hanging out with them like it was nothing. Harry tells them the man claimed elven troops are marching toward this very area, and Eileen can't believe how friendly he is. Turns out Harry says the guy just grew up around here. Eileen takes the old man's hand and gives him gratitude with her own heart. Then she tells the boys she's heading off to meet a huge group of elves, so they can stay behind in the village. They burst into disbelief and shout that they can't, not while she's out there alone. Suddenly Eileen blurts that the guys are in the way, and if anything goes wrong, escaping will be way easier if she slips out alone. Those words hit the guys like a punch straight to the heart. At night he turned into a bird and swooped after the neighboring village. Then he spotted Will and stared him down, before suddenly lifting his finger up. Will snaps to the truth, this orc is on a whole different tier, and maybe it only locked onto that eagle buzzing around so late, but either way, Will knows he'd better not get any closer. He bursts into the scene, and the second he spots Eileen, his brain screams, "Why is she here?" The bird swoops down beside the girl, and her body jolts with pure fear. The boy snaps into a human body and blurts out, "Why are you here?" Then he steps in front of her, bare as the day he was made, and the girl instantly realizes it's Will. He snatches her hand and blurts that they've got to bolt right now. Hanging around the main village is too dangerous. The girl is about to blurt out why he's naked, but he slams the moment shut and tells her to come back later. The boy and the girl trekked far beyond the village, and Eileen couldn't stop blushing at how the boy looked. Will clocked that something was off with the girl, and he asked if she was okay. Eileen blinked in confusion and snapped back, asking if he really meant to make it so obvious he had to spell it out. Will caught it instantly from Eileen's face. He apologized fast, then explained why it happened when he uses metamorphosis, and only later realized he missed it because the fresh air was messing with him. Eileen is right on the edge of thanking the guy for showing her that, but she blurts out, "Why are you here?" And the girl fires back, telling him everything. Will snaps to it, this was the king's order all along. Eileen remembers what went down last time and hardens her heart. She refuses to forgive these orcs, and the guy finally gets it. She saw what happened to the other villages and she's not letting it slide. Will says he can't take on that many enemies by himself, so first he's taking out the orcs in the cave, because there's no point fighting the whole army. Eileen snapped Will, then told the boys she could pick out who she wanted and hand them a reward herself. No country orders, no selfish agenda. The guy stared at her with a calm, unreadable face, and then Eileen shot out her hand, declaring she'd pull the elves out of this hell, and asked if he'd lend her his power. He shut the girl down with a straight-up refusal, even as her excitement blared nonstop. He tells her he won't gamble his life over feelings like that, because when emotions run wild, they twist your judgment and make the whole situation go wrong. Eileen looked completely unhinged, and she still nodded along with that guy. She felt painfully out of place, like the whole room had turned its back on her. And now she's sure she messed up everything, because she truly believes that if she keeps chasing every feeling, then even 100 lives still won't be nearly enough for her. Now Eileen is cutting off and taking her own road. Even though that guy called out to her, she didn't answer, so he's stuck there, feeling like he just can't reach her. Will snapped that Eileen was wrong, and she begged him to stop, saying her heart might not survive another word, but Will insisted he didn't want to carry the same feelings she was drowning in. Will told everyone that to save the elves, he'd call the shots his way, while Eileen would follow her heart no matter what. There could come a moment where Will would have to stop, but right now, they still had time to push forward together, and Eileen couldn't shake the memory that this boy had always been a misunderstood man. Eileen got it every single detail. She's about to drop everything and join the guys the second she's done prepping, then she pulls one of them aside and demands the location of the shelter. After all that, they don't just talk, they literally eat each other's hands, and now they're allies. From up above, the boy sweeps through the forest again, scanning every shadow like a secret map, and he can't stop asking himself how he's supposed to protect those orcs. From what he saw, the orcs were getting wiped out. There were only 20 left, elves included, so they had no choice but to go begging other villages for help. Again, he repeats it, once every warrior stacks up together, they still somehow hit only 100, so the guys end up bringing just half the orcs' numbers, and if the elves dare to challenge them head-on, they're done for. Lafania tells you elves are built with agility and magic on tap, but if you cram them into a tight corridor or throw them into a heated brawl, they suddenly can't fight worth a damn. Will tells himself if only the elves could unleash that blazing speed and sharp, agile strikes, they'd actually have a chance, because the orcs are packing 2 extra fighting forces, and the real question is how they're going to take down the orc commander. Will realizes that once the commander is gone, the orcs will fall apart without orders, and the elven forces will finally have their opening to strike. Only a tight crew of talented people could spot it, and Satsuki, Cirilla, and Mia are exactly the right trio to make it happen. Will sprinted toward his village, but panic hit. He had to catch up with the others fast. Then he remembered he'd left his clothes behind, so he spun around and ran back immediately. The elves huddle up and rest deep in the forest, but Satsuki can't help it. Boredom starts creeping in fast. Right here, the girl whips around to Lafania and pleads, "Teach me how to fight with my legs." She clings to their training promise, something that'll save her in battle, but then Lafania's hope crumbles and she sinks into despair. She can't figure out why Satsuki keeps yelling bang. Sarilla sees the girl is shaking with frustration because Satsuki doesn't get a single thing she's saying, and Sarilla explains that Satsuki just isn't the listening type. Miyai bounces a few times, whips around to Lafania and blurts, "Is this what you meant?" Here we go. After a quick warm-up, I spring up and snatch the tree branch with a huge jump. Lafania backs me up, but Satsuki's eyes go wide, shocked that that girl can actually pull it off. Then Sarilla snaps to attention and realizes Satsuki better quit while she's ahead. Lafania clocked Mia's talent instantly, and Mia realized that if she uses every joint in her body, her strength shoots up. The girl landed softly on the ground, then immediately said she still wants to learn how to use her aura. Lafania bursts out that she's desperate to learn, and then she grabs Mia in a tight hug, insisting she'd rather teach her than be taught. Right then, Satsuki's temper erupts. Lafania is pushing Mia into training so she can rise as a powerful warrior, and Mia snaps back that she's not a fighter, she's a thief. Sarilla grins and says Satsuki must have learned it from Mia. Satsuki says she can teach her to master aura perfectly, and Sarilla snaps that just yelling bam won't cut it. Now Lafania is finally ready to start training. Lafania tells the girl to feel her aura, bam, then Mia realizes it's basically the same explanation Satsuki gave. Lafania tells her that her body keeps changing day to day. Some days she feels weighed down, and other days it's the opposite, and the girl nods and agrees. Turns out everyone's aura shifts without even thinking. On brutal days it twists one way, and on easy days it slides in a whole different direction. And after hearing that, the girls were blown away. Mia blurts out that she doesn't know how to use it here, and Lafania tells her straight, she'll have to learn it through training, until she reaches that perfect mindset where every single day feels effortless. Mila says it's stupidly simple, and Lafania just shrugs, "Stop, keep running forever." The girls had zero clue what she was talking about, especially that word, forever. Lafania leaned in and broke it down. If she keeps running, one day her body will feel so light it's like it's finally letting go. Lafania insists the girl should lock this feeling into her memories, so she can summon it whenever she needs. Lafania reminds them to keep running like it's forever, but the girls still won't find their spark. Then she grabs Mia's hands and pushes her to give it everything. Meanwhile, Will rockets through the dark night forest, and he's almost at the elves, so close he can feel it. The boy clocks the rain clouds barreling straight toward them at this pace, and yeah, it's only a matter of minutes before they get soaked. Suddenly he hears rustling in the trees, and his gut tells him something's creeping closer fast. He can't get a clear look like from above, so he figures the mystery creature has been lurking in the bushes, staying hidden. Right from the middle of the forest, strange sounds blasted through the trees, and the guy, still gripping his staff, froze, trying to figure out who was calling out to him, likely closing in by the steps, and yeah, it probably was an elf. So he needs to stay razor alert and wait until they finally come closing in. If only I was with him right then. Cat ears streaked past, and the girl he'd been thinking about burst in front of him, charging forward at full speed, and total shock hit his face. The girl lunged ahead, charging straight in with her head first. The boy tried to call her out, but she never even turned. Then an elf came flying after her, barking, "Run faster." Suddenly, she slammed to a stop, snapped her head back toward the boy, and it looked like she finally heard him. The girl, flushed red, froze in confusion over whether he was asking or just declaring, then blurted out congratulations on his return, while he stood there, totally baffled, like he couldn't even figure out if he'd gone anywhere in the first place. Later, the elf crumpled onto the ground, her own hair spilling over her head like a curtain. It was Lafania. Girls circled her, firing off, "Are you okay?" because some of them truly thought she was dead. Turns out she wasn't hurt at all. She was mortified because William had seen her as this super stern instructor. Right then, the boy blurted out, asking if he could tell her how his adventure turned out. because they never spotted a single orc, and their big forces were stuck back in the main village while the elves were being packed away as prisoners. Turns out they were nothing but scouts, and honestly, he can't stand the thought of any of them laying eyes on this, because they won't forgive them. One of the girls shouted at the hero, daring him to say they could actually win. But he couldn't be 100% certain. Still, their odds looked insanely good. The enemy's weakness was basically in their hands, and right along the way, he ran into Eileen. She stepped in and offered her help on the spot, and everyone was blown away. Wait, did he really end up meeting her? Turns out she wasn't here for him at all, but getting help from this monster still couldn't hurt, right? And yeah, he was dead on when he labeled her a monster, because Princess Deli was standing right here, and even he couldn't believe it. She would show up the second her preparations were done, and the others immediately started peppering everyone with questions. Who was Eileen? Another adventurer, maybe. Then he leaned in and asked if they'd ever heard of a country called Graceburg. It was a human state. Then she was revealed as the princess of this kingdom, only for everyone to realize the princess was a monster. One of the girls froze when she found out she was royal blood and blurted, "Why?" As he said it like he'd just brought his own proof and a buddy along. He said it like he wasn't even listening, insisting he'd spotted clouds on the way there, like, "Just wait, it's probably going to rain." You snapped your gaze up at the sky. Really, rain now? They haven't even finished preparing yet, and that was exactly what made it so bad. If they get sick out there, it's over. Your health is everything, because on the road and in a fight with bad health, one wrong turn and everything can go horribly bad, so what are they supposed to do to prevent it? Right then Mrs. Eileen snapped an order, "Everyone go home." They knew she was insanely strong, but she was still just a kid, and they refused to risk her life in a deadly battle alone, so she snapped, "Then attack me yourself. If they beat her, she'll let them in, but she better say yes fast because she's running out of time." With hands shaking, the guards unsheathed their swords and snapped at Lady Eileen, "Get ready." In the blink of an eye, they were already sprawled on the ground, beaten. She was satisfied, sheathed her sword, and thought she'd finally won, until the knights burst back with fresh strength and attacked her from behind, yanking her into their grip. She started hurling them in every direction, snapping, "Where did you even learn to fight like that?" One of the knights sprawled on the ground, scooped up a fistful of sand and flung it at the princess, and she snapped back asking if he really meant to throw sand at her. He swallowed hard and said he was truly sorry. The ones gripping her started yelling at him to just do it already, because they'd stop her by any means, yet she snapped back that they were the ones with bad manners. So she stopped holding back too. Then just a moment later, every knight was crashing back down on the ground, and as she steadied her breathing, she muttered that only luck could save them now. And right in that moment she shot forward, no time to waste. She was late. I couldn't help wondering if Will was just waiting for her. She suddenly remembered the most embarrassing thing imaginable, and her face exploded into heat. Without her focus, she careened straight into a tree. The brutal impact tore the whole thing free, yanking it down to the ground with the root pain exploding through him. For heaven's sake, it was all because Will showed up in front of her like that. Right as she yelled at the sky, the rain came pouring down. Ice cold air clawed at them, and she frantically searched for somewhere, anywhere to hide, praying the elves were all right because they never treated him kindly. She spotted a strange dome nearby and sprinted straight toward it. She reached out to him, and there they were, elves inside, sparking a fire while no rain fell anywhere nearby. She couldn't make sense of what was happening at all. Seeing her drenched in rain, they yelled for her to come inside, because she was soaking wet. The princess demanded to know why it never rained inside, and the answer hit hard. It was all thanks to a magic called cottage. The cat-eared girl leaned in and asked Sarilla if she knew anything about it, and Sarilla just stayed weirdly calm. She'd already seen a brand new kind of magic, then she even praised Mia for asking in the first place. She slipped away in secret and tore into the book of magic asterisk, reading it under the radar. Mia wondered why she couldn't just have Will explain everything, but that would have been way too awkward, and right after, Will went wide-eyed because when he saw the book, he was completely shocked. He strode over to the girls and insisted the magic textbook in her hands was the real deal. Did she have any clue there were at least 20 more books recommended for the same journey? He planned to hand them to her next time, and that's exactly why she snatched the book away and hid it from him. But she can't lug that many books, so she calls it not worth the hassle, and then Will calls Eileen. Drenched from head to toe, she stares at him with wide, adoring eyes, smiling like nothing about him ever changed, utterly dazzling, watching him with pure, tender devotion. He realized the rain was hammering them so hard that even changing clothes wouldn't save them, and right when the princess tried to assure him everything was fine, she sneezed, so he stared at her as he pulled his clothes off. The girl asked why he was undressing again, but he just insisted on handing her his clothes so she could wrap up tight. She blushed, he pressed her for what happened, and she snapped back that nothing was wrong. The girls watching were just embarrassed. Lafania clearly had a soft spot for Will, at least that's what it looked like, because the other guy absolutely didn't buy it. She sensed Lafania was unlike the others, and right then the princess behind them leaned in and demanded, "So what are you two talking about?" The girls shot up, startled out of their wits, then scrambled to explain that they hadn't planned anything like this, pushing a bundle into the princess's hands and urging her to hurry and change. The princess, finally out of her old clothes, warmed her hands by the fire when Mia rushed up and asked if she was cold. She just smiled and said she was totally fine. Then another girl slid up beside her and asked if she was hungry, and she nodded, because they'd still got elven food left. The girl clutched a tray of steaming treats in her hands, and for the princess it was totally new, like she'd never seen anything like it before. She grabbed one portion, took a bite, and boom, flavor hit her hard. Suddenly she wondered if she could just sit there. After all, the girl with the tray said she needed a good rest. That was exactly what William warned them about. They couldn't let her freeze. More girls spilled under the dome. Elves in soaked cloaks turned out to be the last elven warriors, marching in right away but without rushing, and then one of them snapped her gaze straight toward them. She stepped up to the girl and thanked the man for everything, and at first she was totally confused, until the cave memories slammed back into place, and then she turned to the warrior, asking how her wounds were. Good news, his injuries were already healed, skin and all, but inside the pain still festered, and if they'd only moved a little faster, they might have stopped everything before it got this bad. But the elf shook her head. Everything was fine, and she didn't stop there. She kept slaughtering orcs again and again until that sweet relief finally hit. Already seething, she stormed off by herself, and the princess who'd been watching dropped into sadness. She demanded they hurry up and deal with it already, but now it was clear they had to regroup, get their heads right, and conserve every ounce of strength, especially the princess. With those words hanging in the air, Cerelia clenched her fists, and Eileen caught it right away, eyes dropping to the ground with a heavy sadness, the tension between them snapping tight, while Will sprinted past, not even slowing down. The girls stared him down like he'd messed up, and one snatched his hood, yanking his focus straight onto her. She shot him a question, "Where do you think you're going?" He was about to slip off for recon, but she cut him off fast and flat. Before she stopped him, he'd already started working his cottage magic and something extra. And the reason she wouldn't let it slide, he works way too much solo. And Mia could handle the recon. Before he even caught his breath, she started ripping off his cloak, stealing his chance to think. They couldn't let their main strike force go in solo. Mia's also going to keep practicing non-stop running, but the girl warned her, "Don't push yourself into exhaustion." Mia told us not to worry, promised she'd move carefully, then dashed to the side, because the rest of us still needed a little rest. I perched on a giant tree branch, eyes glued to the sky, and right when dawn was about to break, it was finally time to head back. The moment she said that, the familiar elven warrior slipped past below. So was she really on reconnaissance, or was something else going on? Her ears twitched like they'd just caught a threat. She spotted 3 orcs lurking off to the side, way too many for one elf, but if they didn't clock her, she could slip away without a fight. But that girl had zero intention of leaving. She snapped her bow up and locked onto the monsters. Mia froze, totally clueless about what was happening. Meanwhile, that furious elf had her aim trained on the orcs. So now Mia was stuck asking herself, what in the world was she supposed to do? The moment the sun started spilling in, Will shot his eyes open, blinked hard a couple times, then sat up and whipped his head to the side. There was Cirilla, already saying her morning prayers. She looked like pure firelight, glowing from head to toe, and the other elves couldn't help blurting, "She's a goddess." The girl spun toward the boy and greeted him with a bright good morning, and he shot back, asking if this was where faith truly started, only for her to stare at him like, "Wait, what are you even talking about?" The hero snapped his head back at the pile of clothes and demanded, "Where's Eileen?" Then the truth hit. When Cirilla woke up, Lady Eileen was already gone, and she and Satsuki must have slipped out to train. "All right, Satsuki, Eileen did this. She probably did it just for kicks, and Satsuki's getting toyed with again, so tell me, did the monster princess strike back?" "She had to be training non-stop. There's no way this kind of skill happens naturally, right? Satsuki has forged herself into a brutal opponent, and honestly, nothing hits harder than facing a hardworking genius. And the wildest part about Satsuka is this: no matter what hits her, she never gives up, and she's always ready to charge straight into the next challenge." It also hit him that he'd just added 4 more magic arrows against Alice, and his mana kept swelling like it was building power for what came next. The way he can use it keeps growing, and it's downright fascinating, until you can tell he's getting more and more hyped about it, like he can't help himself. Seeing that, the girl told him to calm down and promised she understood everything, then let out a heavy sigh. She can't stand seeing all these monsters around her, and the guy just doesn't get what she means. Like, was Eileen the only one here? But to her, he's the real monster standing right in front of her. He slammed the truth into her. She wasn't special at all, just ordinary with no talent and no real grind behind her. Turns out she was famous in the temple for her talent, and it hit him. Was she really ready to back the hero instead of the monster? He hesitated and she snapped, asking if he was even listening. She made it simple. He had to pick whose side he wanted to stand on. Turns out he was just messing around to make her laugh because she and Mia are seriously talented. And hey, your worth isn't judged by skills alone. Mindlessly comparing yourself to some random person just to decide you're inferior is straight up dumb, because if the world is truly run by an elite, then yeah, what about Will's father? Right from the start, he swore the people around her were one of a kind and impossible to replace, so she didn't have to stress about a thing. Then she reached out and called him, and the moment he heard it, his face twisted into something strange. Did he really think this all came down to his relationship with his father? He was sure of it, and now it made perfect sense why Eileen had told him to consult William. The king, Eileen, and even the court magician's head couldn't soothe him just because of how society worked, but she could. She called him back, kept the conversation rolling, and asked if she could finally give her take, and he told her she could. She pleaded for forgiveness, but his words hit like hollow chatter, nothing but noise. In this world, anyone who can't think with logic just guzzles resources, like bandits who torch villages and snatch the food right off the table. When things spiral out of control, they'll yank down anyone trying to make the world better. So he can't help wondering, is there really any honor in admitting you failed? Like when the villagers blocked the knight from catching the bandits themselves, yeah, that's when it really hits. Her thinking is basically his father's, and he hates it, maybe he even loathes it. Cyrilla can see it clearly, and that's exactly why she thinks they're dragging him under. He stared at her like he didn't get it, trapped by the shock of how they'd even ended up here, while she worried there were better, more suitable people out there for the job of being his companion, and he was completely unprepared, not knowing whether to laugh, argue, or shut down. Words like a more suitable companion, that's total nonsense, you can only laugh. But even if he says it, it still won't hit her heart, it'll land as nothing but empty noise. But if he stays silent, it's basically him giving a shaky, maybe, to her take, and then he'll be dragged right into a world he never wanted to touch. Nope, he doesn't want any of that, that's not even the point. But now, it finally clicks in his head. Cyrilla's heart thinks just like his father's, but he refuses to let her, Satsuki, or Mia slip away. But can he really explain it in plain words? No way, if he doesn't show it, he can't get it across. So what should he just show? He had no idea what to do, so he slapped some kind of wrap over the girl's head, and she had zero clue what was happening. Then he blurted out that he was just as confused, though it was painfully obvious to everyone. He couldn't find the words to tell him, but his heart was screaming for new adventures with them. Though this wasn't the same fantasy he'd built in his head, a brutal samurai, a tough thief, and a calm priest. And he ended up with 3 girls, one's always grumpy, one's got a brutal sense of humor, and the third is straight up unhinged. But he doesn't see them as options or misfits, because to him, they're all real, irreplaceable friends, and he refuses to decide who's worthy. So if they can't fix this, their friendship is done for good. That's the one thing he refuses to risk, he won't let them slip away. He said it out loud like a vow no one could ignore. The girl burst into laughter, then pressed him right there, asking what had him so locked in his own thoughts. She had no idea he could pull a face like that, then weirdly, it made her feel a whole lot better. And yeah, she felt like she wanted to be with everyone too, like she finally understood what he was trying to say. Satsuki, him, and me should all be together. The moment they started talking about Mia, they all realized something huge, then the big question hit them. When was she finally coming back? Deep in the forest, the elf snapped her bow up and locked her aim on the orcs. I sat on top of that tree, sweating, thinking, if he went after her and stopped her, the orc would spot both of us. But if he bolted, he could link back up with the others, and then we'd crush them together. But if even one of them slips away, they'll track down exactly where the elves are, and where they're headed next. If they caught her, she'd be forced to slaughter them, or be killed, or leave this elf behind. So the moment she loosed an arrow and watched one monster fall, she ripped off her cloak and hurled it aside. With a flick of her magic, she hurled it straight at the orcs. Watching it all from the sidelines, Mia snapped and rushed in to save the day, only for the elf to freeze in shock at the sight of a familiar face, because she definitely wasn't expecting to see her here. Mia barked at her to sprint upstairs, faster now. Already perched up on the tree, they stared down as orcs raged, hammering the trunk like it owed them money, and the warrior finally barked at Mia, asking what she was doing here, like he didn't know the real question was hers. Why would she be trying to die? But if she dies, she won't let Mia get dragged into it, especially since she already owes Mia big time. Still, now there's no way out, they've got to wipe them out, one after another. The monsters pounded the tree harder and harder, trying to knock it down, and then, crash, they finally brought it to the ground, right as the girls dropped in after their jump. They burst apart in every direction, trying to bring down the orcs, but somehow they all swarmed as one, charging straight for the elf warrior and tearing into her. Mia's eyes went wide. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. They slammed the girl into a tree and closed in from every angle, trapping her on all sides. A monster slammed in hard, and the hit drove straight into the girl's hand, so brutal it instantly darkened. She crumpled, crying out in agony. They grabbed her by her injured arm, hauled her up, and laughed in her face. They were already gearing up for another strike, and I was about to tear the elf apart. But Mia made it just in time. She crashed in and went for the attacker right before they could strike, and they totally let their guard slip the moment they turned away from the elf. Right then, she seized the opening and unleashed her magic on one of them. He launched at them again, smashing into one and knocking them straight down. The other two snapped with rage and charged at Mia, racing straight for the alpha side. She stared at the wounded girl, clenched her teeth, and summoned fresh power to keep fighting, because there were only two left, and the elf was already too broken to throw another punch. It's 1 against 2, so tell me, does she actually stand a chance against these orcs? The orc swung at the girl, but she sprang out of the way just in time, and now the only thing she can do is fight while those monsters close in from every side, trapping her in a nightmare. She slipped past their punches and swung back with everything she had, then she managed to land a hit on one of them. But somehow it still didn't hit the mark. She might pull off the win if she kept pushing, but her stamina was already screaming for mercy. She had to scramble and slap first aid on the elf warrior fast. If she could match Satsuki's skills, she just might pull off a win. But time kept sprinting and her body suddenly felt like it was weighed down. Still, if she could tap into her aura, maybe she'd turn the tide. Oh yeah, there's definitely an aura, and she knows it because everyone's throwing it out without even realizing it all the time. Use it and your whole body turns weightless, so yeah, that's exactly what she's chasing. She braced herself and dodged the barrage again, and holy, she felt lighter with every step, like Lafania was giving her wings. Now it was all on her, just land the strike. Mia couldn't match Satsuki's power, so she had to outrun it instead. The monsters glanced at each other, and somehow that glance lit a spark, Lafania, and then Mia's mind latched onto an idea. The monsters snapped their stares, wheeled around, and bolted the opposite way. She was reeling, completely lost. Why were they hauling ass like that? Were they sprinting to the orc headquarters to report something? She refused to let it happen. She screamed at them to stop right now. And then she tore straight for them, but the second her aura flared, she realized she couldn't even predict how insanely fast she'd become. She slammed into one of the orcs and sent him crashing onto the ground. When she finally opened her eyes, she was dangling upside down beside a tree trunk, while the orc she just fought was trembling on the ground, stuck there and unable to rise. Was she imagining it? No, she could feel it for real because she just moved every single joint with perfect balance. Then she pushed through and tried again. Right away she snapped into speed, darting between the orcs and slicing down one of them. Turns out it was way harder than anyone expected. The orcs scrambled to flee, but she surged forward and crushed them with a savage strike. Those battered orcs were barely standing, and she decided to end it all in one single, crushing strike. And now they were sprawled on the ground, beaten, and it was finally over. She dropped to the earth, exhausted, just to rest for a moment. She shot back to her feet right away, because the warrior needed her help, no time to waste. But her body refused to listen at all, so she crumpled backward and slammed into the ground. Fatigue isn't messing around, but she's got to drag that elf back to the shelter, no excuses. Then it slammed into her. She couldn't move, not after pushing this far. No way. Mia had to keep going. She always finished what she started. She thrashed her legs, kicking hard, praying it would somehow loosen the grip. Right then a voice cut through the air, her voice the princess's. She called out to Satsuki, saying she'd found them, then hurried right up, eyes searching, and asked if she was okay. They remembered the dust clouds from training, so they ran to come help, but nobody expected to find them here, and no matter what, there didn't look like any injuries. She was furious. How could they be killed already? And she snapped that she wanted to fight too, even making Mia's temper flare at those words. But she shoved it out of her mind, jabbed a finger forward, and declared that the elf had to be saved. They raced back to camp, where Cerelia worked to patch up the injured woman's wounds, while the rest of the team just stood there staring, Mia trembling uncontrollably, yet she still forced the question out, how's the elf doing? The panic finally cracked, no more serious wounds, she was okay and she'd wake up soon. Mimi burst out laughing in relief, dropping to her knees right there on the ground. And the wild part is that she actually tapped into aura for the first time right in the middle of this chaos. Maybe she was so locked onto her target that she couldn't think of anything else, the way some people do when they rely on aura too much. But Mia had no clue what she was supposed to do to fix things, so the princess shrugged and told her to just get used to it. Until then, she'd have to push her limits, testing how long she could burn through her aura and how many times she could do it. She couldn't help wondering what her true limit was. Eileen, as she left, said everything seemed okay now, so they should go lend a hand to the other elves. Satsuki nodded along. Then Will strode up to Mia and demanded where, roughly, she'd fought those orcs. She tossed the map on the ground and jabbed her finger at the spot. Sure, it's close enough to show them, but what if they don't get it, since those 3 orcs never came back? But Felona insisted it was all going to be fine. Those elven warriors they sent for help had already started coming back to them. The meeting spot was that cave, right when the girl finally realized their next move wasn't even on their radar. That's why the contacts had been posted at the cave since last night, waiting like a trap with teeth. If the elves roll in, they'll guide them straight to the new base, but if the orcs show up, they'll vanish, slip past them, and only then bolt for their lives. We tracked the orcs near the cave, only to find the enemies already knew the place, because they'd been fighting them there before. Hearing that, me froze in a trance, and the hero leaned in, demanding to know what happened, because she hadn't even thought about it before. If she'd fled, would the elf really have avoided suffering? Just as they were saying that, the elf finally woke up and snapped. No, she didn't make things better. Mia fought tooth and nail all the way to the end, solo, no backup. At first, the elf couldn't wrap her head around it. Why would I save someone who's meant to die? Then Mia got left alone, and all that mattered was one thing: she bolted and ran. But she refused to quit even though everything was stacked against her, and while me sank into total despair, the warrior drew strength from her. Then she struck back, and now she'll live. With an elf's lifetime stretching forever, he'll never forget Mia, no matter what the world throws at him. She fought for her life, and that's when her little savior showed up. She fought with everything she had and ultimately gave her own life. And now the guy she once saved was about to pay her back. With those last words, the girl crumpled to the ground again, eyes shut tight like she'd just fallen into sleep. He ruffled Mia's head and asked if it wasn't amazing, but the second his hand touched her, he yanked it back. Sorry about that. He figured she'd blow up from what he did, but instead she stayed ice calm, because deep down she was insanely happy. The girl rushing past shouted to Satsuki and the princess of the human kingdom. But then she lined in and told me, just call me Eileen. Now they jumped in to help with the housework, because me was giving it everything she had, and they refused to just sit around. They told her she could use aura. The girls watched as Lafania's tears started pouring down, one painful drop at a time. She's flying high because she busted her butt and finally did it. Now she's a real warrior. And yeah, she's still a thief, but wherever she steps next, she's got it handled. So, who's she going to marry off to who? The word marriage hit Leifan like a bolt. Then, before she could even breathe, she shot William a question. How many wives did he have? Princess, I'm so lost, I don't get what she meant at all. She dragged Satsuki into shaking answers, asking if Will had gone married, but there was zero talk like that. Then Lafania leaned in and asked if they were part of his harem. She was so certain people were polygamists that the princess screamed, "Where did you even get that?" Because she knows people like that exist, but she's not one of them. Then Lafania finally snapped. She'd been mistaken the whole time, and all she wanted was to jump back in once this was over. Those words hit the princess so hard she actually trembled. Then, out of the bushes, someone exploded into view. They screamed at the top of their lungs that something terrible had struck. Then it hit them. The orcs were already advancing. The taste of victory vanished fast. Now, a fresh battle was charging straight at them. The princess watched Satsuki try to copy the elven gait in those heels, and it felt like the calm before everything exploded, because, apparently, a pack of orcs had finally marched out. They're rushing back to that old cave hideout, and the commander, turns out he's an orc lord. They can tap into their aura, and that defensive aura they rely on is no joke, so expect around 30 to 40 orcs to show up. And this detachment is just 1/3 of the main orc horde. Those full forces run about 100 strong. Before, they could squeeze out a single strike team of 13, but now the Emperor's not holding back. He's gearing up to unleash an entire platoon. They're unbelievably cruel. If they'd all moved together, they could have stormed their base and freed the prisoners. So what are they supposed to do now? If it was just one platoon, they could have smashed into them head-on without breaking a sweat, so the girl nodded in full agreement. After all, they only had about 30 elven warriors left, and their numbers were nearly identical. But they were nearly wiped out, yet they pushed on to cut the risk, because the orcs had been trained to the bone and were ordered to report anything that goes wrong. So they still have zero clue about their true power or where it really lies, and that's the advantage we need. We can't let them figure it out. If we want to stop the damage and keep any secrets from slipping out, then we have to end them, every single one. She said so sure, but can it really asterisk be fine? Yeah, their numbers match almost exactly, but the elves and orcs are built totally different. After yesterday's rain, the ground's slick with mud, so if they really want to use the elves' agility to the fullest, they've got to change things fast. But the non-hero actually figured things weren't so bad anymore, only for the girls to be completely thrown for a loop. Later, one of them got slammed into a full sprint as a whole horde of orcs came stampeding after them. She stalked up to a jagged cave-like crevice, closing in as if the shadows were calling her name. Will slid into view and waved her over like a ghost, then cheered her return and pressed, "How'd it go?" She swallowed hard and said, "We're probably getting caught." Orcs are hunting elves and Mia's freaking out because she pushed Lafania to do all the work. She keeps telling everyone, it's fine, but the truth is Mia's been out scouting all night. She was curled up in her backpack for a while, but the rest was over. She was feeling strong again, ready to move, only she didn't know what to do next until Satsuki pitched the idea of keeping her in the backpack so she could sleep and travel at the same time. Now they finally saw the orcs surging toward them. Will unleashed illusion magic, summoning a perfect copy of Lafania right in front of the orcs. Lafania herself agreed it looked exactly like her. Yeah, one little detail threw him off. He totally mixed up her build, and it threw Fenola off too. Mia snapped back that it was actually good Eileen wasn't here right now, because she'd be spiraling over thoughts like that for sure. He had zero clue what she meant, but she shut down his questions and told him to drop it. Then the orcs totally bought the bait and charged after illusion straight into the cave. They huddled at the edge, eyes locked on the orc lord as he stepped into view. Will sprinted ahead and sent Mia running forward. They realized the orcs weren't moving at all, just like the hero warned. Sure enough, they were on edge, fearing a trap, and their minds kept screaming that the danger hid right inside the cave, all because of that illusion. Now that they've finally stopped, we can unload magic and arrows with way more accuracy, and even after yesterday's rain, the mud is still clinging there. So Elf pushed for her spot, but the guy snapped that they'd better stay sharp, because they still hadn't won. At first she felt the whole thing was a lost battle, no chance, no hope, just pain, and now I can't help but wonder how it's all going to end. The hero got called from behind by the princess herself. She told him the flank had been reinforced, like the trap was already ready, and though it felt like time to strike, she kept lingering on something that clearly had her attention. She asked if he and Lafania had been alone, and he shot back, yeah. Then it hit him, Mia's warning about it, and he remembered that Eileen hadn't been there when they built the illusion. He told her that, yeah, they shared the same interests, but what really blew him away was being able to have her here with him. And once the fight ends, he slips the illusion onto her too, but he totally misread what the others said, and she doesn't understand a thing about what he's trying to say. Either way, now it's time for them to start. The plan says his chances of becoming the target are a brutal 90%, but she grabbed his hand and told him, "Don't be scared, trust me, I'll protect you no matter what." He unleashed his magic and drove it straight into the orc squad. He unleashed the wizard's skill. One of them finally caught it, but it was already too late. The punch was aimed at them before anyone could react. William warned that stopping the ones outside his magic's reach would be hard. Last time there were 13 orcs, now 2 more had shown up. He tried to hold the line, but the enemy kept flooding in like it didn't even matter, and everyone had to stay sharp, so he kept swinging anyway, striking again and again, and the elves just stared at him, baffled. The mighty lord himself got cut down, wounded to his core. And when it all finally settled, only a handful remained, still standing on their own feet. He wrecked half of it in one savage hit. Right then the elves snapped their bows up and, on the command, unleashed volleys straight at the survivors. Lefania snapped at them to stay sharp because the enemies weren't gone yet. She knew there was still danger lurking, and they had to keep fighting, even if it meant just one measly orc. The orc lord was still standing, and the second he spotted the hero closing in, his eyes lit up. But the princess snapped aside his attack like it was nothing, and her eyes widened because she hadn't expected him to keep fighting. So she stepped into the ring as his opponent, then they tore into each other with relentless back-and-forth attacks. She clocked a protective aura around him like a shield made of fate, and every strike she unleashed was meant to end in death. She snapped at the hero to stay out of it because she was determined to take that orc down herself. He figures she'll pull through, so he lets loose a magic arrow at the other survivors. Satsuki also charged into the brawl, teaming up with the other mighty orcs to bring the fight to its breaking point. Still, he's gotta get ready, because if things blow up out of plan, he'll need to be ready to fight back. He spotted the orc already crumpled on the ground, completely beaten. If it weren't for those injuries, this would be way harder, but then you've got the orc emperor standing there, and that guy is brutally strong. It looks like the fight's finally done. The princess clocked it instantly. Mi had gotten faster than Satsuki. Next time they'll have to storm their base and face the Orc Emperor, but he told everyone, don't panic, because he already has a plan for how to crack that base. After a while they wiped out every last one. No survivors left on the elven side, not a single casualty to count. Turns out he just crushed the fight, an easy win from start to finish. Once those words hit, the elves went, fine, if he's with us we'll make it work, even if it meant getting along with humans, and Lafania even pushed for a break, but Will snapped back, no, we keep going. Apparently he was about to launch a full-scale attack on the base, and hit the Emperor himself right this second. They can't stop the offense, no matter what. In the middle of the forest, the girl kept screaming for him to finally speak up and say exactly what he meant. Every single person snapped their eyes to him like he'd just detonated the room. They just wiped out a whole platoon, so the orcs are going to smell something's wrong the second they catch wind of it. No intel in their hands means this is our perfect moment to strike. But that's not the point. Next time he should have said it way earlier, and he's right. Still, even if they start to fear their own power, what happens to Will himself? He turned over a third of his men and rushed it out, refusing to waste the chance, until it was gone and he'd used up roughly another third. It'll take around 2 hours to get it fully back online. If he's not at full strength, charging in is a terrible plan, so they'd better wait until every drop of mana comes back. But if they decide to threaten the hostages, then it's over for them, because they won't be able to move a muscle. Either they walk away and abandon everything, or they get killed with it. So they've got to strike fast, first save the hostages, then hit back, or they'll get wiped out for good. And yeah, there's basically no real choice left. After he said that, the room went dead silent. Then the worried girl blurted, will it really go the way you promised? If we strike and bring mana back, won't everything finally get better? The elf paused, weighing every word. Then another girl slid up behind her and told Vanola to step aside, just for a few words, while the other elves busied themselves, yanking arrows out of the orcs' bodies. They couldn't afford casualties, so they had to do what he said, but the girl snapped back, screaming that he should listen to her, and with him not even in decent shape, he couldn't protect himself worth a damn. The princess begged her to step in and handle it, elf, and they never once imagined he'd be put in real danger. Everything's going to be fine because they're not alone. Even if he's hurt, they can still heal him. The elf swallowed that hope and trusted it blindly, but that belief cracks. She just slipped it all in and let him decide. They all started bickering, but she didn't back down. She forced herself to do everything she could and marched off. I thought about letting him crash in her bag while we walked, like she'd done before, so he could refill his mana and move again. But it turns out that plan was straight up impossible, because the bag was tiny, so they pushed the fabric to stretch and carried it together instead. Mia called the girl a genius, but only for ideas like that, and still, they went for it. But the boy was already panicking at the thought of sleeping in all this chaos, and just then the elf swooped back up with a mysterious bottle, insisting William use it. Turns out it was an elven potion packed with magic. When the hero's companions spotted it, they let out a terrified scream. Was it really dangerous? Yeah, in a way, it totally was. This potion is brewed from the world tree's sweet juice. Drink it and your mana comes roaring back, but it'll cost you 50 gold. That price was pure insanity for a single potion, yet they still snatched it from the treasury while everyone was scrambling during the orc attack, and for once it paid off, but the guy couldn't believe they handed it over like it meant nothing. But honestly, it was fine. These mercenaries had a deal for a reason, and the payout they'd agreed on was never going to feel like it was too much anyway. She really was grateful. But they still hadn't cleared the forest. Then, right after those words, the guy got swaddled in cloth and hauled down with a rope, and everyone scrambled to wish each other luck before the decisive battle. Then the guy started laying out the whole plan right there, step by step as they went. After a while, the girls marched ahead, ropes tight. They were still tied up. A massive orc charged ahead, dragging them forward like it owned the road. Me joked that he might look like an orc, but he smelled like Will. Then Satsuki snapped that she could slip up and accidentally slice him, and me just grinned, saying it'd be awesome if the two of them could both calm down. The princess panicked over what would happen to his clothes. Then she realized this spell was even simpler than metamorphosis or camouflage, because it straight up hides clothes and all his gear too. Disguise only scrambles the face. The princess clung to the fact that he was still fully clothed, and Cyrilla stared at her with those unsettling eyes and demanded she stop. They were almost at their destination, and you could feel the nerves in the air. How were they even supposed to find the Orc Emperor? Then it hit them. The hero had already shot the magic eye ahead, and just like that, everything was back to normal. He swallowed the potion the elves handed him, and right away, a bright glow lit him up like he'd become pure magic. At last, with every ounce of strength he could grab, he thrust his hand forward and shouted for everyone to move, so absurd it almost didn't feel real. At the entrance, another orc stepped up and gawked at the huge catch, and the hero just shot back that it was headed straight to the boss. No wonder, after all, the other guy thought his catch tasted amazing, but he can't even remember him. They were already panicking about getting exposed, and he still did the dumbest thing imaginable. Just one more step, and if that language-borrowing spell hadn't kicked in, this would have turned into disaster fast. The other girl already figured out the orcs talked like humans, and Will had laid it out during the planning. He could even speak a little with them. They'll sniff out trouble if they chatter too much, so it's better they act like prisoners. As they pushed forward, they saw orcs tearing into elves like it was nothing, and rage hit them so hard they could barely breathe, yet they still had to keep going. Far out there stood a massive orc, and trust me, he didn't look like any ordinary one. The hero snapped into action, told them it was time to reach the elves, and let them know the elves were already with the emperor. Then they wasted no time and headed out. She begged them, don't die for us, even if they won. If the team fell, she didn't want their sacrifice to become a joke, and somehow that crushed every last bit of joy. Still, he understood, nodded, and swore he'd earn a reward for sure, because he still had to burn off the magic potion she slipped into him. She leaned in and told him the potion was part of the reward too, do more for them, and she'd have to hand over the entire treasure because they were closing in on the emperor fast. He stopped eating, snapped his gaze at the people marching toward him, and spat that the hero stinks. It didn't smell like women at all, it reeked of a human male, and he tossed him a piece of the uneaten food and demanded, so who the hell are you? At that exact moment, he snapped a spell and ripped the girls free from their robes. They all surged toward the emperor, and when he saw the man standing there with Mile, surprise hit him like a punch. Were they really showing up just to get eaten by him? He yanked out a massive club, and right then he realized the three girls could tap into aura. He stared at the prey like a hunter with one goal, and it practically came straight to him, while the princess couldn't stop praising just how brave he was. The emperor roared across the whole area, demanding every soldier rush to him, because if they didn't make it in 30 seconds, he'd kill them on the spot. He figured he'd overwhelm them with sheer numbers, or maybe he knew it was a nightmare to face them head-on. Once he clocked their strength, he steadied himself and sized up the fight like a pro, smarter than anyone expected, yet they weren't acting on accident because they had their own plan too. Even though the plan's explanation came out messy, they still locked in the core idea, some kind of magic built for moments like this, while he shouted for help from the orcs living in the settlement. The hero cracked open spatial gate magic and tore the world in two. It didn't matter, the orc emperor was already done for. Their fearsome enemy had been cut off and trapped, just as they'd planned before the fight. To reach the orc emperor, they slip into disguises, speak borrowed languages, and use a magic link to pose as prisoners, because the disguise will totally remake how he looks. They're borrowing a language so, if anyone stops them, they can claim everything's fine, and that magic link will let them fake being prisoners, so when they strike down their emperor, the orcs will be thrown off and confused. The elven warriors couldn't risk breaking their orders, so they swept around the enemy camp in advance, ready to strike the moment the time was right. Once they finally reach the orc emperor, they'll blast the dimensional gate open, right away, so they can separate everyone before they're able to regroup. Right after that, he slammed a strengthening spell in place, and his companion followed with a blessing, while the other girl kept asking why they didn't cast it sooner, until they finally realized they had no idea how long the trip would take. It'd be a total waste if the effect faded before they hit their mark, so mana had to be held tight and never wasted. And yeah, he might not be alone out there, but they're still set on grabbing the upper hand by striking first, just like last time, because getting to the orcs in the first place was brutal. The princess apologized for him because, yeah, he was the shortest anyway. Then it cut back to the present, right in front of the orc emperor. Eileen and the orc emperor stand neck and neck in raw power, and Satsuki matches that same force against the orc lord. Yet there's another lord and 3 ordinary orcs looming, and if nothing gets done, the whole battle tilts out of balance. Eileen and the orc emperor are equal in strength, and Satsuki and the orc lord are equal too. Before you toss them into another dimension, you've got to cut away the extras first. The girls kicked off the brawl while the guys gripped their staff and stared, wondering what kind of damage he could land. The furious emperor stormed straight at them, and his reflexes were terrifyingly sharp. He warned them, don't get cocky. If you start dodging, you'll blow your shot at the surprise attack. The princess seemed to get it, and that sudden realization sent the emperor into a rage. He lunged to hit her, aiming straight for her left arm. Satsuki was taking down those other orcs left and right, and for once, everything was going her way. Mia barreled forward right behind him too, but she burned through too much aura way too fast. They slammed in with a sudden strike, and Eileen snapped into action fast, but her arm was still hurt. Satsuki tried to cut down one of the lords, but before she could finish her usual routine, they struck right when she was still mid-fight. The emperor snapped that the princess was impudent, so tell me, was she really about to fight him with just one hand? In the middle of this knight and princess fate, he finally learned the truth. She wasn't a fairy or a myth, she was a real human princess. She marched right up and introduced herself as Eileen Grazerod, the first princess of the Grazerod line, and swore on her own name that she would crush the orc emperor. He just couldn't believe who they thought they were dealing with. A full-blown squabble erupted. Princess screamed, "Who does he think he is?" while he kept seizing the elven settlement. They slugged it out and shouted curses back to back. Then the orcs snapped, telling them the elves had already picked these lands as their home and even named their territory a country, and if anyone found them, they'd be hunted down and killed because the world labels them as evil. That's why they keep getting slaughtered over and over. Silence swallowed the hero as he watched it all, and the princess even pointed out that orcs are savage toward elves too. That's not evil, right? The emperor basically said they only needed food to survive, so why does it feel so evil? Do they finally get it? Without females from other species, they can't even reproduce. If they're hunting for someone to blame, then point your anger at God, the one who made this whole world. After hearing him out, the princess snapped back that she'd take her words away, because now it's full war and the orcs' very existence is on the line. The girl nearby raised her blessing and unleashed it on her comrades. It felt like a miracle, like some divine power had shown up to hand out hope and quiet the fear, even if it doesn't solve everything, because honestly, it's still a million times better than having nothing. Especially when Satsuki throws everything into the fight and still can't pull off a victory. If this holy protection can pull off even that much, then you'd better play it safe and use it. He snapped a physical enhancement spell toward me like a weapon, aiming it straight at my body. At first she didn't even get what was happening. This power surged through her, and it felt like her whole body was upgrading in real time. The hero snapped at her that now she could face the Lord, no excuses or she'd be a fool, and she marched straight toward him. Before she couldn't do it at all, and that blade wouldn't even budge it, but now she turned the whole fight effortless and won without breaking a sweat. The emperor told the princess she was done darting around, but even he could feel himself getting used to it, how she kept slipping away and putting distance between them. This was brutal for them, and if things kept going this way, trouble was only going to spiral into something way worse. The emperor swung his club at her. Everyone stared, frozen in shock, as she shot off to the side like a streak of lightning. She looked utterly wrecked. Everyone knew they had to move fast and help right away, then their own enemies came for them. Eileen's in a terrible mood right now. Good thing her defense power has her back. If she took a clean hit, she'd be totally fine, but if it was the kind of strike that could kill, then yeah, that'd be a problem. But he can't dwell on that. He'll face whatever this battle hands him and accept the outcome. The orc emperor scoffed. Sure, he'd landed hard, but she still stood after taking his blow, and that shocked him so much it almost felt unbelievable. The hero clocked the emperor's smug grin, like he'd already sealed the win, but it was way past too late. He slammed a physical blast into Eileen. Right away, she snapped her sword up and crashed straight through her opponent's weapon, dealing massive damage. And it all shattered right in front of our eyes. The princess lined in and told him the one who'd get killed would be the emperor himself. She swung again and landed the blow. The emperor got obliterated and slammed to the ground. Everyone stared at it like their minds just blanked out. Are we really finished already? The girl sprinted to the princess and fought to heal her. Just like Eileen always does, hardly any knights could stand up to the orc emperor using just one hand. She spun toward him, grinning, and told him how relieved she was that he was safe. Right after those words left his mouth, she crumpled and passed out, bleeding badly, nonstop. He suddenly snapped back to what he'd been thinking just moments ago, that he'd take whatever this battle handed him, even if this hit ended him, even if that island lost its mind, and still, somehow, he couldn't shake the same question. Was this really the cost of winning? The ones who rushed and demanded, "Is the princess okay?" They were told, yes, you can heal her wounds, but no one could say when she'd wake up, and still, that news hit like hope. The hero blurted out the name Eileen, and just like that, the spell raining down on them snapped and faded away. They were thrown back onto the field, surrounded by a swarm of orcs. The orcs had already noticed their emperor was down, but the heroes were running on fumes and shaking with exhaustion. And once we hit play, get ready, there were a whole swarm of orcs waiting to tear things up. It'll be brutal to take them down, but he won't let them hurt his comrades again. He hurled a fireball spell, trying to crush their spirit, and the orcs about to charge froze, then spotted a massive flame orb blazing across the sky straight for them. But it was already over. Now he was fully unhinged. The elves got marching orders, move in threes, then cut through the orcs, one by one, until none were left. Because the elves had already kicked things off, they got a lucky break, and now they had Asterisk to step in and help them. The hero clenched his will and summoned that blazing fireball once more. One monster lunged at him, but Eileen snapped back to herself and shoved it out of the way. Her legs buckled and she could barely stay upright. He swept her into a tight hug and lifted her right back onto her feet, and she blushed so hard she begged him for forgiveness. Turns out she wasn't fully steady yet, but the smile on her face said she was over the moon anyway. His spell yanked the enemy's attention straight to them, and he immediately begged for forgiveness, but getting angry was rare for him, until he saw Eileen collapse and total control snapped. I can't stop thinking what would have happened if she never woke up, because then she couldn't have thrown up that force field to protect her. Yeah, that answer bombed hard compared to the last one, straight up not well received. And the princess leaned in, eyes locked on what was going on right now, because the numbers looked almost even, but the orcs were falling apart, thrown into chaos by the general being gone. So yeah, then you've got to help the others too. The guy rushed up to Eileen, grabbed her hand, and demanded to know if she was really okay. Her face burned with embarrassment, but her eyes lit up. She said she was totally fine, even though her hand kept trembling. He figured it was because she still hadn't bounced back, so she told him to watch out and cover her if anything went wrong, and he swore he would, while his comrades were clashing with the enemy on the front lines. The second he agreed, she practically lit up and rushed forward without wasting a second. He stared at it, and suddenly a flashback from his childhood slammed into his mind. Orcs got crushed with shocking ease, first as your loyal allies, then as enemies who couldn't stand a chance. As everyone watched, people couldn't help but gush. Sure, it looked insanely cute. A few hours later, everyone crumpled, defeated, broken, and out of the fight. The elf thrust a bag into their hands and said they'd be wiped out if not for their help, pure, blazing gratitude spilling out of her. Inside was the reward she'd promised, but the way she smiled. It screamed that something even bigger was waiting in there too. They caught it fast. Turns out the elf doubled the reward and basically dared them to take the deal. They split it like this: 204 days for 240, then 80 gold per day for 2 days. So you've got tea in the mix for 104 tea, and the payment hits at the end for 200. When you add it all up, it's 360 gold, and then that stacks into a total of 740 coins. That cheap end they always sleep at hits them with a 2.5 silver price, breakfast included. Then a gold coin stretches across 2 days, and after that it's about 180 gold coins per run, meaning they could do nothing all year long. He decided to double-check because it was way too much to get wrong. Still, if the hero hadn't stepped in, everything would have been gone, since they're self-sufficient and don't really need money. They only pull these out when they're trading with outsiders, and this time, the whole deal got locked in with those very people. He finally got it and stopped fighting back, then nodded along like, all right, if they say it's true, we'll gladly take that reward. The team froze by the bag of money, staring like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The elves said, for us it's simple, we're all heroes, and they swore the legend of William, the great hero, and his squad would be retold for generations. An elf Mia had just saved rushed up to her, calling her her little hero and swearing she'd never forget her, and then every elf gathered round and bid the heroes farewell, waving goodbye like they meant it. They're just kicking off their adventures, nowhere near being heroes yet. For him, heroes are the ones from childhood storybooks, the kind he stared at in awe, wondering how anyone could live up to that, and now somehow those same people were out there getting recognized as heroes without even trying. Eileen blurted to everyone that Will adored stories about heroes, and that he'd been hooked on reading about them since he was a kid, so Will just tapped her on the head and growled that she shouldn't have said that out loud, and the elf got the message. Maybe it isn't love at all, maybe it's pure admiration. But now he can't stand on the same ground as those heroes, and he knows he won't last in a fight to the very end. She rushed up to the princess, wrapped her in a hug, blurted out that they were all heroes in her eyes anyway, and instantly turned beet red with pure embarrassment. Then she sprinted up to the hero, planted a cheek kiss on him, and blurted out her thanks. She blurted out that he was her hero too, and the people nearby instantly went wide-eyed with shock. The princess, watching all of this, was trembling. Could Will and Lafania really end up together? Will asked them to hold off on the conclusions, and he never saw this coming. The princess sank into sadness, then it hit him, the illusion again. He snapped Eileen's name into the air, reminding her, and right after that, he conjured the illusion for her. Because they'd been childhood friends, he built an exact replica of her, while the others stood there, totally clueless about what he was planning. Even she couldn't tell if she should smile or feel uneasy. He'd carved her down to the tiniest details, like he knew her better than she did. Was he truly watching her? Still, a rush of happiness hit her anyway. The partner who showed up out of nowhere stared at the illusion and blurted, "Wait, isn't that a guy?" The princess caught it instantly, and her sadness hit even harder. She fought the orc emperor with everything she had, and still, he didn't even see her as a girl. Then he apologized, saying he'd never meant harm in the first place, like it was all water under the bridge since they were kids. He'd always treated her like a comrade, so when it came out like that, it was just him messing around. Everyone finally got how brutal it was. Then the princess crumpled even harder when she heard they were nothing but comrades, and she knew she should have seen it coming, but this was beyond too much. But when he treats her like she's just a girl, something eases in her chest. Then she spots his torn clothes and he starts stripping off his robe, and she blushes all over again, panicking. "Why are you undressing?" He told her, "I just noticed your clothes were falling apart and I figured you deserved better," so he tossed his cloak to her. Then her face lit up and finally everything felt right again. And about the elves, yeah, the orcs got wiped out, but that doesn't mean their nightmare was over. Not for everyone who fell, and everyone's still aching from the damage. And if you've lost your family, your friends, or you're stuck fighting physical or psychological pain, you're probably carrying a whole mountain of problems on your back. But that's a whole other chapter, and for them this story shuts its cover right here, because they're about to launch into a brand new journey. They finally rolled into the city of Adelsha, dropped into a table and clinked cups as they drank tea, because for once they could breathe and rest. But nope, their plan wasn't meant to work, because right then a girl slammed through the door with a joint mission. But someone shot that plan down. Didn't they have enough money to rest now? Mia was hyped too, because this was her first joint mission, and Will nodded right along, saying they should go for it. In the end, the final holdout against everyone finally shut his mouth, because the mission wasn't about winning debates, it was about conquering monsters, and when she went silent, the others had no clue what she had just seen. What had Cyrillus so rattled, and who are they hunting, exactly? And just like that, they rolled into Norman, an unforgiving mining town where the earth never stops spitting out secrets. It's been 2 days since they showed up here, and the place is packed with dwarves. One of the girls lined in, dying to know if those stone worms they'd just talked about were basically the same as earthworms. Her face radiated pure dominance, like, "Are you serious? This question is painfully stupid." When they stared at her, she just shrugged and said, "Everything's fine." Then they remembered she'd already torn off from Eileen that afternoon, and all battered up, Eileen showed up at her guards. She suggested they drop their bags, rest in the capital now that the job here was done, but Will snapped that they couldn't, because they hadn't reported the mission's completion to Atlasia yet, and the capital was way off in the wrong direction. She totally regretted skipping the capital, and it haunted her every single time. She kept insisting it didn't matter, like they could just forget the whole thing. The dark-haired girl let out a grin and said she still remembered stocking up on all those random souvenirs. Then she cracked with an embarrassed little shrug. She bought them just because they were cute. One of the guys passing by couldn't stand it. He started mocking them, calling them weak, low-ranking, and acting like they were headed to a picnic. The folks marching beside him urged him to just drop it and forget about them, because they'd be wiped out soon. He burst out laughing like, "They nailed it," and said these fresh faces don't even bother hearing the advice from their own older comrades. Even with all that higher rank, they still loved dishing out advice, and he didn't look sad for a second, because even when those people played the elders, contempt was all he felt, with zero respect. Are their ranks really that badass? Will tells me there's only one rank above them, because most people quit before that point, so once you finally reach it, they treat you like a real, full-on adventurer. The girl didn't have a clue what he was talking about, then it hit. To earn a rank, you had to clear a brutal task, but for most people, even the lower-tier trials were more than enough. So they started climbing the ladder, and that climb went on forever. Was the rank advancement task really that brutal? He'd heard so many adventurers died chasing it, and only a tiny handful ever made it to the next rank, so the higher you went, the thinner the crowd got. And that's the truth, so loads of D-rankers are totally fine with taking on jobs at their exact level. He told the girls, "Stay calm, this mission is only D-rank." Then he smirked and added, "Just like now, you're E-rank, and we're still going to get competitive with D-rank and up." Even they could grab a quest below C-rank, but the man who'd been listening the whole time, and who was walking ahead of him, suddenly started ripping into him like, "You mocking us?" And then he had to wonder, was he really so cool that girls were trailing him everywhere? Rage surged through him as he snatched the man by his robe, yanked him off the ground, and hauled him into the air, while the girl's comrades watching from the side stared at him with deadly, menacing eyes. Will's legs, dangling in midair, finally started to loosen, and at that exact second Satsuki shot forward, grabbed the katana's hilt, and warned the elder that if he wanted a fight, she'd be the one he faced. Then everyone in the area snapped their heads toward them, tension so thick it felt loud, while Satsuki's legs, still hanging in the air, slowly relaxed. Yui finally admitted that the pose definitely helped loosen his legs, but outright brawling between adventurers was a hard no. so the furious guy snapped at him what he'd said, and Yui just swallowed his pride, apologized, and claimed it was nothing. Since he'd lived longer than the rest of them, he knew one thing for sure: fighting would ruin everyone, and right after he said that, he shoved the guy down and, rage blazing, marched straight up the stairs. But they pushed forward again and again, while the hero's condition kept spiraling, and soon he couldn't last a single stretch on his feet. The comrades who caught it started whispering to each other, like, wait, even he has a weakness. Because of course he wasn't a superhuman, just an ordinary guy with no magic. Even with hardly any warrior training, Cirilla still insisted she thought he was only pulling off magic. You should have clocked it sooner. Yeah, not just levitation or flight, that boost means he's at it again, just like before. But the destination was almost there, and he knew it. No more magic, not if he wanted to make it through. Cirilla got exactly what he meant. Still, did he honestly believe this was it, that he was only doing all this to save his mother? Satsuki heard him and scooped him up in her arms, telling him, when it hits like this, you lean on your comrade. Then he blinked and asked, so, what are you doing next? She shot back that it wasn't such a bad idea, then admitted even her own friends wouldn't back her up. The girl bolted down the stairs, snapping that even while he slept, she was done playing second fiddle, yet he still begged her to let him go. By then they were already at their destination, and the older comrades there had witnessed everything, so the guy who'd just been bullying him, still reeling from what he saw, snapped, "Are you ashamed?" The hero admitted he was absolutely ashamed, while the elder who'd snapped at him not long ago stared at him with the saddest, most pitiful face, and somehow he understood. But then they cracked how to move without burning a single drop of mana, Will froze in confusion, then swore he'd make sure he'd never have to rely on that trick again. They all marched into the building with their seniors, but the seniors grabbed every seat, so Will's team had no choice but to stand there. A girl sat on a chair like she owned the place. She was the mayor of Norbin, and you could tell she was relieved they finally showed up because from what she could see, everyone here had one mission: to grab the quest for the stoneworms. He grinned, jabbed his finger at the crowd behind him, and casually said they were E-rank newbies, while his own team was packed with seasoned D-rank adventurers, and he figured she already had it all figured out herself. So she can act like she didn't spot the rookies, and then hook the veterans up with double pay. Mia clocked it. His humor was even worse than Williams's, and the girls looked furious at what they'd just heard. Cirilla, right beside the hero, yanked his sleeve and insisted they needed to look good and absolutely crush that team. But he couldn't figure it out at all, because this wasn't some game, it was a real trial meant to crush adventurers. He stepped forward and declared, "Sure, we've got less experience, but we know these rockworms and every weakness they've got." The moment those words hit the air, the mayor spun to the elders. "What do you know?" he demanded. The bully shoved a buddy over and, trying to explain, he blurted out the lamest, most boring stuff, like how they looked like giant worms, lived mostly in caves, and were unbelievably strong. The mayor cut him off, saying she understood, and that was enough, then spun to the hero and demanded he spill everything he knew. The hero replied that the stone worm is a monster that nests in mines and rock, its body measuring up to 5 meals long, though it can grow even bigger. Earthworms burrow underground and munch the dirt, but rockworms slice through rocks like it's nothing, and when they turn mean, they spew acid from their mouths to attack. And on top of that, his body feels as solid as stone, so cheap weapons can barely even scratch him. And if he's bigger than normal, his monster rank jumps to D or higher. That's when the mayor finally clocked it, saw he was awake, and told him he could stop. She made it clear right then, whoever was really interested in the mission would show it. Still, she insisted both groups take it, because they were uncovered in multiple tunnels at the same time. No one even knows how many targets there are, so the reward will rise and fall based on how many stoneworms you manage to wipe out. She's praying they don't drag the adventurer's name through the mud. The healer couldn't stop smiling just seeing their faces. It was a slam-dunk performance, and he crushed it, and the girls showered him with compliments so hard he had to wonder if they'd ever gone this far before. By now they were already deep inside a narrow shaft, and with ceilings like this, their older comrades would have been wedged in tight, yet even Satsuki's sword would snag if she tried to swing it overhead. But the real nightmare with the stone worms is this: they can show up out of nowhere like a jump scare. One of the girls clocked Cirilla's odd behavior, then snapped, "Hey, are you okay?" She told him everything was fine, her mind was clear, and she was totally in control. Right now, their older comrades were also moving through the same cave, tight, stifling, and driving everyone nuts. The one who just fought with the hero squad seethed, furious that the space was so cramped, and even more furious that people kept treating them like they were worse than Will. And it all started when their mage humiliated himself in front of a client, so one of the guys snapped, "Why didn't you answer the question yourself?" But the mage was adamant, gathering intel was the real job. That's why the other guy nailed it, and honestly, they just got lucky. Another comrade was convinced it was pure luck, 100% no skill, just timing, because monsters come in so many shapes in this world, and seriously, who would remember all that? He's even doubting that some college graduate could know it all. Suddenly the whole world lurched and everyone panicked because the tremors were right on top of them and nobody knew where they were coming from. Then the magician ripped through the silence with a scream, and every eye snapped to him. Turns out he totally blanked on using the warning spell, the one that screams when a monster's within a 50-meter radius, and everyone couldn't stop asking how he could forget that. And if he doesn't save his mana for attack spells, he's basically dead weight. Right then, the wall crumbled behind him. Then a monstrous worm burst out of the rubble like it had been waiting. It yanked its jaw open and bared a mouthful of teeth. Every man froze in terror and erupted into screams. A worm tore toward them, and they couldn't wrap their heads around how this monster got a D rank, so the mage shouted for everyone to calm down, insisting it wasn't as fast as it looked. Their commander snapped at him to charge ahead and conjure a wall, so he did, but right then the worm spat acid that splashed all around them, scorching even stone, and the whole group froze in total stunned silence. The magician, panicking out of his mind, marched up to the chief and insisted he could dodge it on his own, then demanded he step aside. The elder blew up in anger, snapping, "You really think this is only our problem? But if they back off now, they'll get crushed by Will, the one they hate, with a burning fury." The moment they heard it, the captain snatched up his weapon and charged straight ahead, yelling for the others to cover him. They sat there in stunned silence and silently prayed he'd make it. Right then, the hero's team finally had things under control. His warning spell had pinged an enemy ahead, off to the right and down below, and the girl couldn't help wondering, is it a stone worm? It was probably that. There was a huge surge of mana, but Mia couldn't pin it down with her ears because the noise was too scattered and too hard to make sense of. So Will decided to cast the see-through spell, and boom, just like he hoped, a worm appeared in the lower right corner, slithering straight toward them. He'd fire off support magic, then shift to a spot where the next hit would land cleaner, and his whole team kept chanting their luck for him, because this guy wasn't just strong, he was the Institute of Witchcraft's best graduate. They stood their ground with weapons up, aiming straight at the worm, and the scary question hit them. Was it crawling toward them because it sensed them, or how the heck it even knew they were there? And yeah, even Will couldn't figure it out. Maybe he can feel the magic lingering in their wake, and right now, he's already closing in on them. The second he said that, a worm burst out of the ground and lunged for them, and the hero snapped off lightning strike magic to blast it out of the way. Right then, another squad of adventurers stared as a worm slithered straight toward them, and it came with a crackling sound like lightning in the air. The squad leader barked, "Snap out of it, hit that worm from range," and the team went for it instantly. One of them snatched up the blades, locked his aim on the worm, and held his ground. But his shell was rock hard, nothing could get through, and when they called up the next squad member to attack, he couldn't even move in that cramped space. The commander had seen enough and decided they were all just useless. Then the magician launched a spell arrow, and it slammed straight into the worm. For a split second it seemed to hit, then the worm jerked and started acting even weirder, and that only fueled its rage. It snapped into motion and came at them even faster. Then the commander threw caution aside, snatched his axe, gripped it tight, and charged straight at the worm himself. He swung once right on target, but it did nothing, and the worm snapped him away, blasting him straight into the wall. Pain tore through him, and the whole team had absolutely no clue what to do. But the commander was clearly disgusted with their conclusion. He barked that they could beat him, if only they'd dare to try again. Sure, they might be rotten, but they were still a daring adventure team. At the very least, they can't just bolt and dodge a mission this big, they've gotta see it through. Meanwhile, William's other team just stared as the magic-warped worm's final twitch died out, and he left the rest to Satsuki, telling her to finish it off, though she couldn't quite get why, because it was basically already dead. He insisted she would pull it off, but if he ever comes to his senses, he'll step in, so she has to finish him while he's still down. Hearing that, the girl lunged ahead and sliced the worm in two, and the enchanted sword slid through it so effortlessly it might as well have been butter. But they couldn't figure out if that was truly the entire task, or if they'd have to do more, yet somehow they nailed every single requirement, and the rest is just there for a bonus reward, because they can't tell if there's more than one. Still, they've got enough strength left to push forward and keep going. But the healer totally missed what they were feeling, so when they saw her face, they asked if everything was all right, and she insisted, "I'm fine," even though her expression screamed the truth. She was anything but. 10 minutes later, they crushed another worm, then, 20 minutes after that, they wiped out yet another. By the time it was all said and done, they'd already taken down 3 monsters. Sarelia couldn't shake the feeling that there were just way too many of them. Will nodded along because in just a blink of time, they'd already bumped into way too many, Mia couldn't stop wondering how many people were packed into that moving group, and the moment Cyrilla pictured a whole colony of rockworms, she shuddered hard. From what he could tell, they didn't mingle freely. If a bunch showed up, they'd usually drift off on their own or pair up in twos and threes like clockwork. Squeezing through the rocks in huge numbers was next to impossible, but they'd already run into 3 of them, and now it felt like more were lurking right here. But the mana was already sputtering out, so they had to sprint back and spill everything to the people who needed it. Cyrilla practically beamed. Me then asked if they'd return here again, and the hero shot back, of course. And just like that, everyone threw their hands up and agreed to retreat. A little late in the mining town of Norvin, a man and a woman wandered around the streets, him talking nonstop, bragging that he'd heard there were 3 gorgeous girls in town. The girl locking up beside him backed Mr. Gurin's words, then added that a man was traveling with them too, and Gurin couldn't figure out why Cecilia was snapping like that. But who wouldn't snap when her beloved starts thinking about other girls? Can she at least be jealous, like she always was in his eyes? There was a hotel nearby, and he wanted her like a treat. The adventurers tore back to the building to meet the mayor, and when she heard their report, her jaw dropped. She couldn't believe they'd smashed 3 monsters in such a short time. The battered other team, after getting mauled by just 1 worm, couldn't believe it when they saw the others somehow wipe out 3, and William's team clocked their exhaustion and froze, stunned at how wrecked they were. After her statement, the mayor said she needs a little time to think, and if that's all it is, she'd like them to come back tomorrow. She's not demanding anything, but she'd be truly grateful if they made their call after hearing her side of the story. The hero nodded, promised they'd be there tomorrow, and she let out a grateful breath. Then she turned to the other team and demanded, "What about them?" The other squad's commander shook with fear, clearly ready to say no, but the words slipped out as, "We'll come too." Right then, Cyrilla marched up to the rivals, desperate to help, and they brushed her off, insisting everything was fine and they only needed to rest. Then Satsuki snapped at them, asking if they really should gamble with their lives like that, and the other team leader nodded along. But once they finally stepped out of the mayor's building, it was already way too late. After the mission, Satsuki's stomach growled, so she spun to the others and offered a snack. Siri jumped on board and then shot back. "So, what did we make today?" Turns out they scored 120 gold, and Mia practically felt her luck leveling up with every coin. They were getting richer, for real. Cirilio couldn't wait to grab something awesome with it, while Satsuki just wanted to stuff herself on something interesting. William told them it's totally fine to treat yourself every now and then, and the girls lit up, then pushed ahead with pure excitement. They rolled into the place after ordering a mountain of dishes, and the whole spot was packed with cute decorations. Satsuki practically beamed at the huge pile of meat, while Mio lit up over the drinks. They laughed together at the table inside the place, and the healer leaned in, saying it'd be even better with Mrs. Eileen there, so the hero nodded right away, because Eileen was more than a friend to him. She was a fellow adventurer. Hearing William's words, the 3 girls snapped their focus onto him and demanded he say it straight. What does he really think about Mrs. Eileen? Mia pressed, so you figured it out already. And William just tried to dodge the answer by pretending he hadn't. He had no clue who they meant. Then Satsuki dropped the name, the princess. He snapped his gaze away like he didn't want to touch that topic at all, and Satsuki pushed one more question. Was he seeing her not as a childhood friend, but as a girl? He told them to calm down for a minute. He'd never cared about gender, and only recently had she made that point. The moment they heard it, the girls' hopes crashed, and they felt awful for Eileen. So they shoved the whole argument aside and dug back into their food, refusing to bring it up again. Just then, the very couple who'd been talking about them on the city street walked into the place and spotted the squad's table, and Cerilia's mind instantly snapped to one thing. She had to send a letter to Eileen and demand she wear a dress next time. He leaned over the table and told them straight up. At first he'd thought about joining them for dinner, but then he tossed that idea aside and suggested the girls cut loose that night, calling them beauties. After he said those words, the girls at the table stared him down with pure disapproval, like, wow, this is a fancy place, yet these guys pop up everywhere. They shoved him back where he came from, like that wasn't enough. They insisted he had no common sense at all. He flopped onto the sofa beside the girls like he paid the rent, muttered that life is painfully dull when you're trying to be nice, and made it clear he'd do whatever he wanted. They didn't just disagree, they clashed hard on what mattered. Satsuki heard those words, snapped to her feet, and declared that meant she could do whatever she wanted. Then she hurled her fist forward to strike at once. The guy's companion saw it coming and shouted for Mr. Gorin. But the moment was already gone. The girl slammed her fist to a halt just a few centimeters from the young man's face. He just laughed at the sight, bragging that she was his type, so she snapped, still not getting why he wouldn't dodge, because if she wasn't even going to land a hit, what was there to dodge? He yanked Satsuki's arm and pulled her up, and the pain was obvious. Her face screamed it. The girls who witnessed it panicked, and Will's fury flared. He barked at the guy to stop everything right there, and then, just like that, he let go of the girl's hand. Then she demanded to know who Will even was to them, like, was he really their boyfriend? The hero just went silent because the whole idea sounded completely ridiculous, and he honestly had no idea what to say. Then the young man snapped that his girls lacked upbringing, and it left William frozen in a daze all over again. He couldn't quite get what he was even talking about. Was it because their cultures were so different? After that, Goran lost all interest and shooed them off, and the moment his words hit, rage flared in their hearts. After that, Mi snatched the girls by the hands and pulled them away fast. The hero trailed behind them too, but he wasn't about to give in to his demands. Right now, he just had to spend time with his friends. He marched up to the waiter and ordered him that the man in black would cover the whole bill. That gentleman couldn't tell if they were truly friends, or if he'd only said it as a joke that felt way too convenient to be real. The healer grabbed Satsuki's attention and told her to hold up her hand so she could heal her. Then it hit hard. Satsuki slumped in grief, convinced she was weak because she'd just lost to the princess today. And I just got absolutely crushed by him. She yanked her hand back, thanking her friend, and waved off the help. She was totally fine. I should head back to the hotel, she said, and the other girls just stood there, staring, silent as she walked away. Mia slipped out too right after her. And the wild part, Satsuki actually wound up depressed. When failure stacks up or plans crash to the ground, it crushes you. William knew it firsthand, because it's almost impossible to accept, and your self-esteem takes a brutal nosedive. The girl beside him shot him a weird look, like those words just unlocked her own painful memory too. She urged him to ditch that hotel and head somewhere else, but alarm bells screamed in his head. But here's the twist, she wasn't doing it for nothing. If she slept there, she'd end up dreaming about the man from the restaurant, and you could tell they absolutely didn't want that. So they said, fine, get her good and drunk, knock her out, and tomorrow we'll spoil her nonstop to lift her spirits. They didn't bother comforting her at all, just went straight into pampering, and they fully believed it would work. At the mayor's residences, the girl flipped through the documents, but the moment she finished, she still refused to believe a word on the page.